And then this is like baby's first communist lesson is that cops don't protect people, they protect capital. It's like, technically, sure. In the same way that lobsters are technically immortal, sure, I guess. Oh my god, she can't have her fucking puppycule in the communist regime, you guys, so we have to throw this entire ideology in the garbage can. You're telling me I can't have my puppycule? I have to leave my puppycule at home? No, absolutely not. The real revolution was the revolution that was in my heart. Let's begin. Okay, so we're doing Leadhead. We're not doing Leadhead, thank God. Leadhead is, wow, how do we even describe Leadhead, you guys? Leadhead has like a 350K sub YouTube channel. Leadhead used to make like video game analysis, video essays and shit like that, and kind of blew up. Okay, that's where a lot of our following comes from. Maybe like 2 years ago, I don't know the exact timeline. We began our descent into madness, and the descent into madness is characterized by information dumping about our personal life and kind of turning everything into a dramatic Lifetime-esque film school dropout, kind of rambling, like schizophrenic video about our life, oversharing, etc., etc. And so Leadhead is a trans woman, and she has like a found family, quote unquote. She's poly, and she like, I don't even know how to explain it. She finds these people on the internet, and then she invites them into like her polycule, and they move out into the middle of fucking nowhere to live with her. They live in like a shack in the woods in like one of the Carolinas or something like that. And all these people like move out with her. I think there's like 5 of them right now. She also cheated on her now wife with this person named Ashley, and then arm twisted her girlfriend, now wife, into doing polyamory. And now she's claiming that this Ashley person that she stepped out on her current wife with is like being abusive or something like that. She claims that she is hypersexual, but she's actually just like a serial cheater. Yeah, there's quite a lot. There's quite a lot here. So anyway, the last update that we had on Leadhead was that she made like a 2-hour-long video about Tyler, the Creator, and how Tyler, the Creator writes music for her specifically, and every single Tyler, the Creator song is actually about her life. For some reason, I don't know. Thank you, white woman, for explaining hip-hop to us. It's very cool. So that was where we left off. And then, unfortunately, we have another Leadhead video, and this one is called How I Radicalized Myself. And people were talking about this in the Discord. I have not pre-watched, but I have, of course, heard rumors and whisperings in the walls. And I guess that this video is going to cause me to, like, mega fucking ultra nuke crash out. My initial takeaway from this is that Leadhead is, like, she's talking about like how she's a radical leftist or something like that. But the thing that I think is funny about Leadhead being a quote unquote rational, like radical leftist is, one, she doesn't know anything about like the history of leftism or anything like that. And then also, she's like a radical leftist that eats at Chick-fil-A. I think like, not to, gatekeeper purity test or anything like that, but I don't know. That's kind of odd. And if you can't tell, history is kind of like my autism niche. So I've heard that this is going to cause a spectacular crash out for me. Yes, Yonkers is about her. When Tyler, the Creator, said, "I'm a fucking walking paradox," he was talking about Leadhead. So her adopted kids, I'm sure, will make a cameo in this video. Leadhead's viewership is rapidly declining into the fucking dirt because nobody gives a shit about her internal monologue. They all followed her for video game essays and video game analysis. And then she acts surprise Pikachu when people don't want to watch her fucking content because it's not what they subscribe for. And she's like, people just don't understand me because I'm so enlightened. She has quite literal delusions of grandeur kind of shit going on. So it's also, film school dropout level creativity here. So let's see. Let's see, guys. Let's first lock in and then crash out. Let's see.
I've got this problem. I really like leftist YouTube channels like Boy Boy, Been a Minute, FD Signifier, stuff like that. They make
FG signifier. God.
Make me laugh, they teach me things, they expand my mind and give me new perspectives. But because all I do is watch YouTube videos, I really only have a surface level understanding of any of it. Today, I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to try to encourage any of you with similar viewing habits to do the same.
Okay.
This is not a video about what the perfect, most refined political ideology looks like. This is a video about personal growth, and how taking an interest in politics can improve.
She's also very obsessed with personal growth, and something that I find really interesting is everybody is like super mad when everybody's like, you compare everything to a cult. People get really upset about this, and I understand why, because cults are, a very specific thing. They usually have a lot of harm or whatever, but something that you'll notice with every single cult, pick a cult. Doesn't matter which one you like. Pick your favorite cult. Jim Jones, fucking Waco, Love Has Won, the FLDS, doesn't matter. Pick a cult. What do they all start with? Self-improvement and self-enlightenment, right? That's what they all start with. That's the kicker there is self-development, self-growth, knowing thyself in relation to something else, usually God. But it is very interesting that we broadcast this to the internet. I find that very particularly interesting.
Improve your life. Like all my videos, I want you to come out of this one with questions about yourself, not answers about me. Let's begin.
Let's begin. Written and directed by Penelope. I would hope so. It's your YouTube channel.
For most of my life, I've been somebody who only engaged with politics on an aesthetic level. I would hear headlines about the situation in Palestine and think, oh, well, I'm going to support the smaller group and condemn the people who are being funded by world superpowers. If a giant army is bombing the hell out of a small community with no effective means of defending themselves, odds are pretty good that the giant army is the one in the wrong. Oh, Starbucks came to my small town and...
Also, disclaimer, you guys, this is obviously a politics video. That is not an invitation for you guys to argue about f***ing politics in either my Discord server or in the YouTube chat, okay? Save that gay shit for somewhere else, okay? If you guys want to argue about politics, argue somewhere else, all right?
Choke the life out of the local cafe scene. Clearly, Starbucks is the evil party here. Oh, a bunch of immigrants living below the poverty line are being painted as dangerous criminals by a gigantic government and their media.
You guys are arguing about racism in the Discord? Awesome, cool, keep going.
Corporations. Clearly, the gigantic government is the evil one, and the immigrants are the victims. Fortunately for me, this aesthetic basis for understanding the world has given me decent politics.
I hate this. I hate this. You can hear whoever's walking, whoever's holding the camera, you can hear their keys jingling in their pockets. This is giving me cancer, dog.
Politics. Time and time again, as I learn about the systemic genocide of Palestinians in Israel that's been going on for longer than I've been alive, or Starbucks operating at a loss whenever they open a branch in a new area, specifically so that they can drive local competition out of business, or the long and storied history of anti-Hispanic nationalism at the hands of U.S. political figures looking for a convenient scapegoat for the ever-declining standard of living in the United States, I find that the aesthetic basis that I used to center my politics around actually did tend to lean me in pretty decent political directions that I stand by after learning a bit more of the fact.
I like how she's out of breath from walking down the street. I really like that. I like how we're running out of breath from, what, like 30 feet of walking? That's funny.
While aesthetics served as a good jumping off point for my growing passion for politics, they left me with at least one major weakness. I was incredibly easy to manipulate. I remember back in 2020, I actually got all choked up hearing Biden's State of the Union address because the aesthetics of his speech fit my worldviews. I was fooled into thinking that he...
I like this self-reflection here. We're probably never going to expand upon this, but yes, your entire personality is driven by aesthetic and what you think is cool, quirky, or interesting. Yeah, I just... there's not going to be any kind of introspection here because it's true. We are just basing our entire personality off of what is cool or hip or edgy at the time. It's kind of like... like the mustache tattoos that everybody got. Now those are embarrassing, right? Thankfully, I never got a mustache tattoo. But you know what I mean? We're just kind of like basing our entire personality and everything that we think is important in life based on what is in the current moment. Like if it was in right now to be a Zionist, I'm sure that Leadhead would also be a Zionist. Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think I think one of the things that are that's just rotting society from the inside out is that people have a very clear lack of values and lack of principles and a complete inability to understand or identify things that are important to them or things that are meaningful to them. They only see it insofar as it gives them social utility in and out group preferences. And I find that to be very interesting. In this essay,
and by extension the rest of the Democratic Party cared about me. I heard Biden mentioning trans people, and I was naive enough to think that he was going to do anything to help my community. As the years of Biden's administration went on and it became more and more clear that he wasn't particularly interested in codifying or nationalizing trans-friendly policy, I realized that aesthetic-based politics like those that I had were the ultimate roadblock to any actual progressive movements and any meaningful social change. For me, liberalism became about one single thing: optics, or to use a different word, aesthetics. Liberalism is about covering yourself in the aesthetics of progressivism.
Ironically, Leadhead is one of those people that is aesthetically, politically engaged. I think, like, that's so ironic.
While not genuinely believing in anything other than a self-ascribed moral right to power. Liberalism is about being proud of yourself for voting a black man into office regardless of his politics, but being worried the second that your son starts dating a black man. Liberalism is about loving Mexican food but not having a single Mexican friend. Liberalism is about hating capitalism.
Dude, I love fajitas. Do you guys like fajitas? Fajitas are so yummy, aren't they? I love fajitas. Hot or cold, I will eat that thing as soon as it comes. You know what I'm saying? Arriba! I love Cinco de Mayo. I love a good fajita. I love, what are some of the other things that white people butcher when it comes to, like, these words? What are some of the other ones? There's some good ones in here. Hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Dónde está el baño? Please come in.
But not trusting anybody who attempts to exist outside of it. Liberalism is about thinking that you're on the right side of history just because you listen to Tupac. Liberalism is what you get when you reduce all of the world's problems into aesthetics for you to attach to yourself so that nobody else can call you problematic. That's the
I know that I'm Plaza Andying the fuck out of this. I'm having a lot of thoughts today, you guys. I think it's really funny too because, like, this is like, hang on, I don't.
That I grew problems into aesthetics for you to attach to yourself so that nobody else can call you problematic.
I lost my train of thought. Entirely. What did you say?
Liberalism is about thinking that you're on the right side of history just because you listen.
Oh, that's right. I was going to say, this is very funny to me because this is like your friend learns a new word and then they use that word conveniently in every single sentence as soon as they figure out what that word means. Like, that's what this is, right? Like, she literally just learned who Karl Marx was and was like, wow, I can't wait to assault everybody with my painfully embarrassing lack of knowledge on this subject matter, you know? You watch a documentary on something and overnight you become an expert in it. You know what I mean? Oh my God, you guys, I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and now I'm going to tell you about Christianity. It's like,
Listen to Tupac. Liberalism is what you get when you reduce all of the world's problems into aesthetics for you to attach to yourself so that nobody else can call you problematic. That's the environment that I grew up in around. Hearing one thing, but seeing something different when it came from my family. Being told to love everybody for all their differences, but spending my entire childhood being very deliberately surrounded by people who looked, thought, and sounded exactly like my parents did.
Thanks. Yeah, unload a little bit, yeah. Yeah, get in there.
I
What's
moved
in
out
there?
and
What's
started
that?
living an interdependent life with my friends that I truly...
Is that literally, you don't even have a vintage Polaroid. We have like the shitty Walmart one. Oh my God, this is causing me so much pain. Help me.
really began to realize any of this. Nothing in the world has ever been able to radicalize me like not knowing if I was going to be able to make rent on a given month. Nothing's made me feel more proud of my struggles than...
I wonder if she's going to bring this up because this is actually a really interesting, phenomena. I think it was Angela Davis was one of the first people to really write about this. And she writes about how she spent her life essentially studying, learning about, reading about, leftist thought, leftist ideology, leftist theory, the works of Stalin, Lenin, Mao, Ho Chi Minh, Thomas Sankara, Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, all these people. She spent years and years and years at school, higher education, learning all of this shit. And then she said, the crazy thing is that I spend all day lecturing to middle-class white people about these theories, these concepts, these ideas, how material reality dictates everything, how class is really important in determining your outcome in society, like how you're raised, how much money you have access to resources, things like that. And she writes about how it was crazy to her that she would go into low income communities, people that don't have any higher education, blue collar workers, things like that. And she would go into these communities and she didn't need to teach them anything because they knew all of these things already because they live it. Every day, they're acutely aware of how their material reality dictates their ability to have lateral mobility in society. So she, wrote endlessly about how she thought it was just absolutely bananas that she would go to all these people that had GEDs and dropped out of high school and did blue collar work, manual labor, and they understood the teachings of Marx, of Lenin, of all of this leftist thought and all of these principles because they live it every single day. Very interesting. I wonder if Leadhead knows that. I wonder if that's going to be in this video. I'm very curious.
Lending my tools to a neighbor to work on his car and thinking about how I spent my entire childhood watching my mom peeking out through the windows of our house, terrified that somebody with less money than us was going to steal my dad's tools. I love myself, and I have for most of my life.
We can
and because of that, I always figured individualism was kind of just inherent to the human condition. No. It wasn't until I started literally needing other people and other people started...
Ooh, does she not know? Does she not know the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? That one of the truest writings that have ever come out of, leftist thought. Fuck, who was it that wrote that? I'm not going to be able to think of it off the top of my head. I might have to get my book. We might need my book for reference, you guys. But man, by nature, one of the core principles of leftism is that man, by nature, is altruistic. That is like one of the core principles is that, you see a fellow human being and you relate to them, and that like naturally humans are collectivist and human beings work better in altruistic circumstances. But, okay.
Needing me, that I realized that is what true happiness looks like.
What does it look like?
Nothing in the world feels better than giving a homeless person something they need, or doing oil changes for my roommate's cars, or not being afraid to ask for a favor when I need a favor, because I know that I carry my own weight. Community, found family, love for the people around me, shared struggles and shared success. These are the things that drove me out of my aesthetic understanding of the world, and drove me towards communism. What feeling could possibly be better than knowing that no matter what happens to me, I'll be able to eat because people who love me
so much pain
and
here, guys.
who I love back will share their food with me, even if everything else goes to shit. If my house burns down and my car falls apart and all of us lose our jobs, I'll still be able to share a meal with people who I love because those people and I will fight to make it happen. Shit, my car did fall apart over the production of this video. These people that I share myself with helped me do what I needed to do while I was fixing it up again. It was always tempting to act like that sense of security and community was just an apolitical fact of life for sociable people, but it's not apolitical, it's communism. And to a certain degree, I think it's something that every single human being in the world has inside of them somewhere. Here's the tricky thing, though. While all that stuff sounds super pretty, for me, it's still, in a lot of ways, just an aesthetic connection with communism that I share. For me, communism is a very simple thing. It's everyone in the community working together to make sure that everyone has what they need to prosper. That's a start, but it's not enough. I don't know if I'm a Maoist or a Marxist or a Leninist. Che Guevara is the closest thing I have to a political hero, but I don't know anywhere near as much about he and Castro as I probably should.
Wow.
I barely understand the difference between...
What do we like about Che Guevara here? What do we like about Che Guevara? I'm really curious here. Identify for me the positive qualities that you like about Che Guevara. I bet we can't name one. I can think of several off the top of my head, because I don't know. I like to know something about a subject matter before I start talking about it personally. Personally, I like to know a little bit about it, but I don't know. Well, let's see.
Communism and socialism. I don't know how modern technology would affect the way that communism is enacted at a larger scale.
You guys, have you considered? We've never even considered how iPhones are going to affect our communist utopia. God, I wonder if there's any modern communist, socialist, leftist thinkers that have pondered their orbs about this before. I wonder if there's any. I simply can't think of any. I can't think of a single person that is alive right now that talks about the material conditions of current society and how that intersects with communism or socialism. That's so interesting. It's a real head scratcher, I think. I wonder, the only people that have talked about communism ever are dead. Yeah, Noam Chomsky is one. I was being rhetorical, Josh. I was being an asshole. Noam Chomsky is one. Angela Davis is one. Oh God, what's the name of the lady that wrote The New Jim Crow? Who wrote that book? Michelle Alexander is one. Brian Stevenson, if you want to count working and operating within the system. Proposing reform. I mean, I guess that's leftist, technically speaking. That's more socialist, though. Like, there are plenty of contemporary people who talk about communism in the 21st century, believe it or not. I think it's really interesting that people, because, like, this is usually what happens, okay? What usually happens is people get interested in, like, leftist thought, leftist theory, leftist ideology. And what they want to do, the first thing that they do, is they go to history, which in a vacuum is not a bad thing at all, right? It's good to know the roots of, the ideology that you're ascribing to. That's a good thing most times. However, what ends up happening is they get stuck in that romanticized era of communism, which is, I'm talking like the Paris Commune level of historical entrapment here. And they get stuck and they don't realize that this is an ongoing kind of conversation that scholars continue to have regularly, continue to write about, continue to, create theory that is able to intersect with contemporary modes of production and contemporary like struggles that may or may not be like a barrier to this. Like, for example, the industrialization of food production. That wasn't really a fucking thing when Rousseau was writing, right? Like, everybody had fucking gardens in their backyard and shit like that. You get locked in this prism of only viewing communism through a historical lens, and that kneecaps you significantly because you're unable to answer questions of how leftism, communism, socialism adapts to like modern barriers. And that is purely out of lack of trying, because there are plenty of scholars that to this day write regularly about communism. Like it didn't just like die when, Mao Zedong died. It didn't just stop as soon as Stalin died. It didn't just stop. People are still writing about this right now. And your lack of curiosity and finding out what contemporary scholars are saying about it shows me that it is, in fact, just an aesthetic for you. And you don't actually give that much of a fuck. Because all of the questions that she's like, oh my God, well, what about iPhones and communism? Babe, people are talking about that right fucking now. Go to any local college campus and take a fucking political theory course. Just walk in there. Just walk in there. There's bitches that are talking about people who are writing about communism right now. It's very interesting.
I don't know how I feel about China. I don't know why unity with nature is always treated as a core tenet of communism. I don't know how communism is supposed to exist alongside globalization or the global interconnectivity that comes with the internet. I'm always talking about how much I wish I could live under communism as opposed to capitalism, but ultimately, I don't fully understand what my life would even look like under such a system.
Okay.
Especially given that my disability makes even just sitting out here really hard. Needless to say, it makes jobs and manual labor extremely difficult, if not impossible.
Probably, I would say probably like probably like my favorites. My favorites are who writes that book? It's called The Red Flag. It's by David Priestlin. That's a good history of communism. That's a really good history of communism book. It's called The Red Flag. And then I would recommend anything by Angela Davis is really good. Race, Money, and Class is a really good one. And The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander is also a really good book. Those are like pretty milquetoast introductory kind of readings. The thing with political theory is, unfortunately, people regurgitate themselves quite a lot. Those are like the two really good ones that I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah, of course. David Priestland's A Red Flag is a really good, like, condensed history. Obviously, if you're sitting down and you're reading, like, all of these works, like, Das Kapital is, like, fucking fat. The State and Revolution isn't that big. But, like, if you're sitting down and you're reading a lot of historical theory, one, it's really hard to get through because it's, like, old theory, right? It's like reading 17th century, like, Old English. You're like, this hurts my brain. This is, like, a lot. But The Red Flag is nice because it condenses all of the history. Obviously, there's more to whatever history you read. Like, pick a historical conflict. There's probably, like, 1,000 books about that conflict. Like, even the Battle of Verdun. There's, like, 20 books off the top of my head about the Battle of Verdun alone. It's kind of the same thing with communist history. Like, there is endless amounts of reading material about all of these subjects. So what I recommend for people if they want to read, like, about history or about political theory is pick a book that's kind of like an overview, right? Like kind of a condensed version, like a watered down version of kind of somebody's writings or somebody's thoughts. And then you can pick what is interesting to you and then learn more about it. So for example, I would say when I started like getting into history, I was really interested in World War II history. That was something that I was really interested in. And the more that I read about it, like I would read something and it would mention, like for example, Ravensbrück is one of my favorite books. It's about Hitler's one of the only female-only concentration camps. And I was reading a book that was about the history of World War II, and it was kind of like, an overarching, like, this is a summary of World War II, essentially. And this Ravensbrück kept getting brought up, and I was like, interesting, I wonder what that is. So I Googled it, and then I was like, oh, shit, this is actually really interesting. So then I started reading more about that, and I bought books that were, like, narrower and narrower and narrower in scope. So, like, start big and then get granular, because you'll find your interest really quickly in what you think is interesting and what you want to learn more about. The other one too is like the Action T14 program. That one's really interesting to me, and I only learned about that in reading Ravensbrück. And after I read that book, I was like, oh shit, like what is this? I want to learn more about this. Start big and then get small. And then you can kind of pick and choose what is interesting to you, and then you can just kind of lock in to what you think is important, because if you just have one thing that you think is interesting A lot of people, for example, like to learn about Auschwitz because Auschwitz was like the biggest extermination camp. However, there's a lot of interesting smaller concentration camps that a lot of people don't know about. So if you read anything about Auschwitz, usually you're going to get told about or learn about or become aware of other concentration camps and extermination camps and be like, oh shit, I wonder what this one is. And you Google it and you're like, oh shit, that's actually really interesting. And then you can find a book and read about that. Treblinka is probably one of the more interesting ones that was like way more effective at extermination than Auschwitz. But very few people know about Treblinka or know a lot of history about Treblinka because pretty much everybody that went there died. So there's not very many like living historical testimonies of what actually happened at Treblinka, but the nittier and grittier you get into it, the more that you find out about it, and then you just learn from there. That would be my recommendation, you guys. That would be my recommendation.
Possible for me. So would videos like mine still be being made under communism, and would that be my contribution to the world?
No.
Which communist doctrines would see my work here as something with cultural value, and which ones would see it as pointless decadence? I really don't know, and I think I should. I think I owe it to myself to know. That sense of community, that thing that I said earlier is communism, has saved my life multiple times, both by ensuring my material conditions remain livable and by giving me a sense of purpose to ward off suicidal ideation. If it's true that, to a certain degree, I owe my life to the ideals of communism, then I think I owe it to myself and to everyone around me to learn a bit more about it. So today's video is going to be...
How can you owe your life to something and you don't even know what it is, but...
a three-part experiment.
Three-part experiment,
Firstly,
okay.
I'm going to write out a little essay about what I think communism is all about.
Very exciting. Tell
why
me
it's
about
important, all that stuff. I'm just going to go in depth about my current, still somewhat aesthetically motivated relationship with communism.
Who is this video for, just out of curiosity? I think this is for her. I think that she, like, sits down and watches the videos that she makes regularly. Like, I think she's making these videos for her. I don't think they're for the consumption for other people, right? I think that she makes these for her to watch every night. The Found Family is like, and she's like, everybody sit down, we're watching my communism video again for the third night in a row.
Step 2, I'm going to read some theory. There are all sorts of pieces of literature written by people who have a far greater understanding of communism than I do. I'm going to read all that stuff, both new and old, and discuss it with the people who helped me get into communism in the first place. And then, thirdly, I'm going to revise my thoughts and tell you all how my relationship with communism has deepened over the course of this experiment.
Wow, I'm
the
very
motivation
excited.
behind all of this being to sharpen my own mind, to teach me how I can start contributing to the world.
Llevat uget nerdi ara. Animation was a state funded in the Soviet Union and it was a thriving industry. Creativity was important for the cultural zeitgeist.
Thank you very much,
The
Guns
only
and Jam.
downside was the censorship.
That's also actually something that I think is really interesting. So third positionists are like, typically they're like, there's like this really weird brand of alt-right where they're communists, but they're only communists for white people. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Okay, it's very interesting. So just walk with me for a second. So something that that these people love to point out, and it's true, is that in Soviet Russia and in a lot of communist countries, culture is incredibly highly regarded. So, for example, even in communist Russia, they were commissioning people to write symphonies. The state was paying people to make music. The state was paying people to make art. They were incentivizing a rich, diverse culture of art. And that's something that is honestly pretty unique to the USSR. There's other countries that do it, but it was the USSR that really, really brought that to the forefront of people's kind of zeitgeist, essentially, is that they were like, no, we should be commissioning and incentivizing people to create. Like, that there is more than just like physical labor, there's creative labor as well. And so third positionists really hang on to this because it's like, you know, why were these other countries willing to put money, the state is paying money for people to create, to reflect their culture, to incentivize, you know, a very specific kind of culture in their countries. But we don't do that. Instead, we get fucking Kanye West and mumble rap and blah, blah. That's where it goes really quick. Okay, take that part out of it. The whole principle that the state would commission people and pay people to create a cultural significant art culture is actually really cool. And that's something that a lot of people don't know. Other countries do it as well, but the one that is most known for doing this is the USSR, which is actually really fucking cool, if you ask me. Thank you very much, Scones and Jam. And then Layla, is this something that just struck you, or have you been pondering your orb about this for a while, how she probs regularly watches her videos? No, that's off the dome. I feel like she watches these videos for herself. I'm going to be completely honest with you. That's off the dome. It's just now coming to me because I'm thinking, who is this for? Who's sitting down and watching this with a smile on their face and a heart full of glee and joy? The answer is no one. So except for Leadhead.
In this communist dream of mine in more substantial ways, and to show you all how much richer your life can be if you, well, just stop telling yourself that your existence is apolitical. So we've talked about the broad strokes, the function of government, the function of the military.
I'm so tired of this bitch making videos and driving. Like, we're gonna get a news story. Woman crashes car and kills family of 4, making a shitty art YouTube video. It's gonna happen. It's in the cards. This bitch is going to kill someone. Pay attention to the road.
The motivations of the individual under communism. I'm starting to run out of things to say for this first section of the video, but
hell yeah, get her.
Let's talk about cops for a minute.
Get her ass.
Okay, so
straight
ACAB,
to
right?
jail.
Anyone who's made it this far in the video probably understands the nuance and subtleties that are wrapped up in this symbol that is ACAB. I firmly believe that everybody living in this world is a victim.
Dude, ACAB except for sovereign citizens. ACAB except for sovereign citizens, you guys. Anytime that I see a sovereign citizen video, I'm like, back the blue, baby. Like, tase that bitch. Yes, you are in fact driving a car. You're not traveling. You're not like a Moorish citizen. I'm sorry, you still have to have a driver's license to operate a motor vehicle. Arrest this bitch now. No negotiating, no conversation, nothing but straight police brutality. Tase her now and get her out of the car. I love sovereign citizen videos. They make me so happy.
Of something. You know, U.S. soldiers are victims of the Patriot Act and nationalist grooming by their government and masculine compensation cycles normalizing one-upsmanship during military occupation, driving people to do horrible, horrible things to other people's homes, minds, and bodies. Cops are no different.
This is gonna make me krill myself.
Really, really hard to believe that anybody becomes a cop because they want to protect the rich from the poor, but ultimately, that's what cops are under capitalism. The way I see it, capitalist cops' directives are as follows. The primary directive is, of course, to protect capital. Make sure that landowners aren't forced to share.
What is this horrible squealing noise? And then this is like baby's first communist lesson, is that cops don't protect people, they protect capital. It's like, technically, sure. In the same way that lobsters are technically immortal, sure. I guess. But there's a deeper understanding here that goes into the function of the police, especially in a capitalist state, especially in America. There's a lot more intricacies here, and it's quite literally embarrassing to have baby's first ACAB lesson as, well, they actually protect capital? Okay, yeah, sure.
Their land. Make sure the doctors aren't forced to heal people. Make sure the power companies aren't forced
True. A cop did shoot the doctor that was trying to cure cancer. That's true. That did happen, true.
to share electricity with the homeless who might want to jack themselves into a power line to use an electric hot plate to make dinner. You ever wonder why Walmart has those special parking spots that are reserved for the police? That's why. It's because Walmart understands that ultimately the cops work for them and not the customers. The second directive of the police is simply to keep the poor down. This one obviously ties in with the first one. It's why most encounters with cops just result in you getting ticketed. If you're poor and you can't afford the repairs that your perfectly safe and functional car needs to pass inspection, but you still need to use that car to get to work.
This is high-level analysis here. I like this. I'm learning a lot. Tell me more.
The cops will give you a fine for that. Were you arrested for a non-violent offense without a single victim, like possession of weed? Well, we'll take you to jail for that, but because we know that you aren't a threat to society in any way, if you slip us a few $1,000s for bail, we'll just let you go until your court date. Then we'll send you to a prison where you might be sold off to Golden Corral or McDonald's to work as an employee, while still technically being incarcerated by the state. There's a reason that in every decently sized city in this country, there's a police station within a mile or so of the poor, usually
Excuse me, ma'am, you can't park there. Dude, this is crazy.
Neighborhoods. There's a reason that bail bond offices are always within walking distance of the courthouse. There's a reason that cops are called in to break up strikes and help scabs get into the building. It's because the entire system, from the top to the bottom, is in place to keep poor people down.
I can't imagine that there's any other reason for laws other than fuck you, poor people. There's no other reason for laws, you guys. Murder is only illegal because it's a capitalist fantasy, okay? It's because the cops hate poor people. The reason that it's actually illegal, you know, to park in a fire lane is because if there's a fire and you're in the way, people are going to die while they wait for you to move your car. Leadhead unironically got like a speeding ticket one time and was like, fuck the cops. There's no reason that I shouldn't be able to go 90 in a school zone. Who fucking cares? They're meant to oppress me. It's so, like, I'm going to keep saying it because it's true. This is baby's first communism. This is what this is.
To be honest, that's why just about every cop is racist. Regardless of their politics or their reason for signing up to become a cop.
Dude, you heard it here first. Every single cop has racism in their heart. Like, again, it's just such a reductive and stupid understanding of this, because I think realistically, if you're criticizing a system, you can say that the system itself functions as, you know, a racist or oppressive system. That makes sense to me. The reason that we use the term institutional racism to describe like policing in the United States and other countries that have similar policing systems, the reason that we describe it that way is because it is important to be able to say that a system that every single actor in that system is not racist, the system itself can still operate with racist outcomes. For example, let's pretend tomorrow that every police officer in America is fired, and they are, you know, in place of the current police administration, we get all, you know, woke lefties, all of them have, you know, degrees, every single one of them is not racist, every single one of them takes an aptitude test that says, I am not racist, certified by the state of Indiana or whatever the fuck, I'm not racist, I can be a cop. Let's say that we do that tomorrow. In this perfect world, the reason that we use the term systemic racism is that void of every single racist cop, every single one of them has been replaced, the system would still have racialized outcomes. And that's why it's important to be able to separate those two things. You can say that it is a question of character that somebody would willingly participate in a system that has racist outcomes. That's a criticism, okay? You know that this is the rape factory. You go to work for the rape factory. Why are you surprised that there are rapes happening? Not everybody who works at the rape factory is a rapist, but every single person that works at the rape factory is complicit in rape. That is the distinction. The reason that it's very important to distinguish these things is because in order to have an accurate critique of the system needs to function in isolation. So you cannot water it down to every single person that is a police officer is racist. Wrong. The critique is very distinctly that every single police officer finds racism to some degree tolerable. That is the criticism. This video is going to make me melt my face with galaxy gas. It's going to happen. I like how we staged a police pullover. It's very cool. It's very cool. It's crazy. If you find something interesting, you actually learn about it and you actually engage with it critically. And then you have these conversations in private. The reason that she's making this video publicly is because she wants to be perceived as an authority. One, that she knows what she's talking about. And two, she wants the good boy points or good girl points, whatever, for being willing to do this journey. This is the same aesthetic as people who show up to like BLM protests and they have the sign where it's like, it took me 20 years to realize racism is wrong, but I'm still learning. And everybody's like, brave, stunning and brave. It's like you want points for playing catch up. And in documenting your journey into discovering leftism or whatever the fuck, you want the praise of quote unquote doing the work. Realistically, you don't get praise for doing the work. You don't. If it's something that's important to you and something that you value, you do effortlessly, and you don't want praise for it.
They're choosing to exist within a system where they're rewarded for punishing the poor, downtrodden, and far more often than not, the non-white. Jesus. Let me grab my car again. The third directive of the police is to serve as their own PR department. It's why in small towns where not much happens, if you get pulled over for not indicating a turn because there was no traffic, there's a good chance that you'll end up with 5 cop cars behind you, all standing by as backup. To anyone who drives by and sees that, the message is clear. Something very, very dangerous is going on, and if it wasn't for the 5 cops that just showed up to confront this one person, you'd be in a lot more danger. It's the reason the cops have become so militarized in their aesthetics, why they're covered head to toe in ridiculous tactical gear when they're just standing in line to get a soda at the gas station. It's why
Where are cops going to a gas station and they're in like full riot gear? Where is that happening? That's a really good question. The militarization of the police is certainly something to talk about, but it's not in the context of like them going to the gas station and they have like a gun. Yes, cops have guns. Crazy, I know. And something that is, I'm not sure how many cities actually do this, but something that picked up pretty early on, I want to say it was like in the early 2000s, I want to say it was 2002, something that's actually quite large and quite big and something that's implemented kind of across different parts of the country are citizen review boards. That's really cool. That's really helpful because it's true that when they do internal investigations, they usually are like, we investigated this and ourselves and we found that we did no wrongdoing. That is very true. However, the citizen review boards are incredibly helpful, and that's something that's kind of picking up steam, which is good to see. I'm kind of being very pedantic and nitpicky and kind of a hater right now, but that's what we're here for.
Why they refuse to turn off those bright fucking lights when they pull you over at night. They posture themselves as a
They leave the lights on so people don't sideswipe them, you fucking dingbat. More cops die getting hit during traffic stops than like in the line of duty, like getting shot and shit like that. They leave the lights on so people who are driving see that there's a car on the side of the road at night so they don't get fucking hit. You fucking buffoon. That's also for your safety, because if somebody hits your car with all the shit that's in your car, you're gonna get beheaded, I'm sure.
They posture themselves as a military because if the military is mobilizing in the streets, then that must mean that there's a war going on, and we better give these guys more funding so that they can fight it. In reality, there is no war going on. All those bright lights and flashy guns are just there to make white people that little bit more afraid of non-white people, because we so often see them getting harassed by a platoon of police officers. They just want to make us think, even for a second, that the person with the mag light in their face must have done something wrong that we wouldn't have done in their position. That aesthetic propaganda doesn't work on me, and you shouldn't let it work on you, but it's an aesthetic that's woven so deeply into the zeitgeist of American culture that it has most definitely worked on a lot of people. It's PR for the cops, and it's PR for hate. The two go hand in hand, just a bunch of greedy, racist, capitalist prick waiting from an institution that fundamentally serves next to no purpose to the common man.
True, dude. The cops do nothing. The cops literally do nothing. It's very true. They don't, like, help you find your shit if it's stolen. You know, they don't investigate homicides. They don't, you know, come if somebody's breaking into your house. No, they literally don't do anything. Like, yes, there are criticisms of the institution of policing. I don't deny that at all. But the thing that is really frustrating, and this is true for pretty much any ideology. If you've noticed, it's the same thing with trans people. A lot of people do this, where you discover like a new ideology, a new identity, and you're here. And instead of like inching towards this new identity, you full swing all the way to the other side, and you just as equally radicalize yourself in the opposite direction. That's why you should always be very hesitant of people that are like, I used to be this and now I'm this. Like, that big radical shift in ideology is usually indicative that people are not having a lot of forethought in diving into things. They're just kind of going with whatever is trending at the moment. So when we're talking specifically about the institutions of policing in America specifically, you must understand that there are communities that benefit greatly from police presence, one, and police intervention, two, especially communities, believe it or not, that are high in poverty and high in crime. There are people that depend on the police to come and help them if there is an incident, and therefore have a positive review of the police. It's not like every single person that has a good or positive sentiment about the police is like a violent racist that wants all black people to die. Usually, they have positive interactions with the police. The police came and they helped me, unlock my car because I got locked out of my car on accident. Or I called the cops because somebody broke into my house, and they were there really quick, and they filled out the report, and they were able to find the person, and they found my stuff within a few days. People don't just have like this gut, like good reaction towards police because of propaganda. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be because people have a positive interaction with the police. And a lot of those positive interactions do come from poor, advantaged or disadvantaged communities, because those are the people that are engaging with the police most often. This like sweeping generalization and this over radicalized opinion that, one, every cop is racist, and two, every single person that agrees with or has a positive sentiment about policing is violently racist themselves is insane, is actually insane. And it demonstrates that, again, this is our first kind of exposure to this kind of content. And because of that, we have an incredibly narrow view and understanding of all of these topics. And probably, I would say, in 6 months to a year, Leadhead is going to be mortified that she made this fucking video, because we're operating here on like a sub-base understanding of any of these concepts or principles. Like, this is not even 101 level. This is like high school level. This is like remedial understanding of these principles. So this sucks.
And that's also why you see all these puff pieces about cops rescuing kittens from sewers or escorting women in labor to the hospital or something. It's all just PR. If that stuff was really what cops were there to do, it wouldn't be newsworthy whenever a cop does something helpful to society, would it? So why am I bringing any of this up? You all know what the problems with the police are, and also I thought this video was supposed to be about communism, so why am I talking about capitalism? Well, and this might be the most idealistic I get in this entire video, but I believe that when we're discussing communism, we have to completely rethink what a cop even is. If a cop's prime directive is to protect capital, then what do they do under a system where money doesn't even exist? Do they beat up farmers for setting aside a bit of their crop to feed their kids? Do they stand around with guns?
And this is a true fact, is that, when people are discussing their communist utopia of their dreams, they are contemplating, what does it mean to be a police officer? We're kind of reinventing this because there still has to be an enforcement arm, right? There is still the power of the state. There is still a monopoly on violence that is maintained and enforced by the state. So sure, we do have to reimagine what that looks like, but not in this sense where it's a very reductive understanding to say that police, at least in America, only exists to protect capital, because that's not true.
To make sure the factory workers keep the machines running? Do they deport immigrants who would rather live under communism than stay in their capitalist homeland? Well, frankly, that's another one for the list for me. All I can really say about the function of the police under communism is one anecdote that I really like.
An anecdote.
Huey Newton, one of the co-founders of the Black Panthers, was visiting China once when a reporter recognized him on the streets and started harassing him with questions. When a cop approached, Newton was unsurprisingly scared. As a black foreign man, he thought he would be seen as the instigator of the conflict. When the police officer then told the reporter to back off and leave him alone, Newton remarked that that was the first time that a cop had ever been there for him, and it was on the other side of the globe from his home. He went on to say that during his visit to China, he felt absolutely free for the first time in his life, free amongst his fellow human beings. Now, that's just one anecdote, but the reason that I bring any of this stuff up is because I personally have a very difficult time even imagining what a cop...
Do you think she even knows that China isn't even fully communist? It's like a hybrid economy. It's not even fully communist. Like, a lot of these fucking dipshits like the social aspect of communism, but the problem is communism is first and foremost a political, or not a political theory, excuse me, an economic theory. An economic theory of controlled markets and controlled supply chains. And like she's really hanging on to like the social aspects of communism without really understanding even what it is, because first and foremost it's an economic ideology. Okay.
That was there to serve the public would even look at, especially right now. The best I've got are hero cops in shows like Fargo, fiction. Just as it's difficult to imagine myself without having spent 27 years in an individualistic culture, it's just surprisingly difficult to imagine the world.
And also, communist and socialist countries aren't the only ones that have collectivist culture. A lot of European countries that are liberal, probably to an American understanding would be like socialist or democratically socialist at the very least. A lot of those cultures are collectivist, void of any kind of leftist ideology or principle. It is in part due to location, right? Because there are countries that are not communist or socialist that have a very collectivist culture.
World in a way that's so foreign to me. Ultimately, I guess that's one of the biggest things I'm aiming for with today's video. I want to, using literature, bounce my own philosophy about all this stuff against the perspectives of people who have lived under, fought for, or ruled within these ideals, which I admire so deeply from afar.
How can you don't even know what they
I said
are?
it before, but I feel like the core tenets of communism have played a role in reshaping, even saving my life for the better. I owe this philosophy a deeper connection than a vibes-based understanding. So, got some books here. Let's read some theory.
What books do we have? What books do we have? Show the books, Leadhead. Show the books, Leadhead. Of course, this fucking poser has a machine that rolls her cigarettes for her. She can't even roll her own fucking cigarettes. Oh my god. You're not even rolling your own? Oh my god. What a poser. What a fucking poser. What a fucking loser. What a fucking boob. What a fucking blank 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 blank. What a fucking... Oh my god. You're not even rolling your own? You don't even know how to make rollies? Oh, this is the most offensive part. This is... Oh my god. Fake smoker. Fake smoker.
To start out with, I chose to read the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in 1848. After joining a secret revolutionary society, the Bund der Gerechten, or League of the Just, their critical communist theory convinced the League to allow Marx and Engels to write a manifesto for the League's goals and ideals, so as to modernize the movement. For now, that's enough historical context. As I wrote these words, I had just finished reading the Communist Manifesto, and it blew me away. It's always been difficult for me to take much interest in anything that's happened past, let's say, the 1920s. Past a certain point, it just becomes difficult for me to see how
We're starting with the Communist Manifesto. Why are we not starting with the Critique on Gothica program? That's much better, in my opinion. Huh. What about Rousseau? What about any of the early writer? The best communist theory that you're going to read is going to come from French philosophers, because the Paris Commune was a groundbreaking success. I don't know why we wouldn't start there. That's arguably the most. Thoreau and Rousseau and here's the other one. I can't pronounce all their names. They're all French. I can't pronounce them, but
humanity's history has affected the modern world that we all live in.
Also, this is not a corduroy couch. This is wicker. This is woven wicker.
In a way that is ultimately just a failure of my character, it's really hard for me to imagine anything written in the 18th century having any value to offer me whatsoever. This manifesto might have just changed that for me. There are sections in this thing that just feel like paragraph after paragraph of extremely well-constructed.
It says, what puppy or... Oh, it says, what I think it says, what puppy or woof don't you understand? Kill me.
Analysis of the world that we all live in today. Things that would be insightful to say in 2025.
Foucault's a good one, yeah.
All written 177 years ago. It was a short and sweet read. I read the foreword yesterday, which provided a bit of historical context to the manifesto, and read the manifesto itself in no more than a single morning. Of course, I'm going to go into more detail before we move on to our next piece of literature, but let me start this out by saying that the Communist Manifesto captures the compassionate hearts and fiery spirit of communism absolutely beautifully. It took me, someone whose perspective is so incredibly bound to my time and place in the world, and made me feel solidarity with people who existed almost 200 years before me. It was a
solidarity. This is just a buzzword machine. Did ChatGPT write this script? This is actually... Okay.
Beautiful experience. So, what is this thing all about? Because it's much more than just describing what communism is. The Communist Manifesto is a response to the Industrial Revolution and the overthrowing of feudal governments, kings and queens, by the bourgeois class. Essentially, it's about the trajectory that the world began upon when private business owners had developed the industrial means to take the old monarchs out of power. The only critique of this...
Why would you use this as the example for that? The French Revolution is a much better example of, proletariat oppression kind of coming to a head. The French Revolution is a much better example of this. Yes, the Russian Revolution is like a staple in communist theory, of course, but the French Revolution is a much better example of this, and there was tangible, lasting changes that have lasted well into the 21st century with the Paris Commune. Well, I don't understand what the fuck we're doing. This is gonna drive me insane.
Industrial revolution that we hear about in school is the ecological impact of burning coal, but as the manifesto demonstrates, it goes so much deeper than that. The rise of industrial machinery homogenized labor, whereas before, and in regions that were yet untouched by the factory, tradesmen with highly specific skills, craftsmen, tailors, stuff like that, were divided by the differences in their trades. In a post-industrial society where machines were such a vital part of production, the vast majority of jobs became homogenized. Suddenly, somebody who worked as a tailor and somebody else who worked in metallurgy had much more in common with each other because both of those jobs suddenly primarily consisted of operating machinery. This finally made it clear to me what the difference between a worker and a proletariat is. The proletariat is a worker whose job has been homogenized by industrialization. Their job requires much less skill and training than it used to, and is...
No, this is, again, we're doing the thing where we're locked in on theory that's a little bit outdated with the way that society currently operates. I hate to say it, but there are still specialized jobs where people are not considered bourgeois or even petite bourgeois. And I think that you're actually smoking fucking crack if you want to try to say that something like a nurse is bourgeois, because a nurse is a very highly specialized skill that requires a lot of training and is not easily replaceable. We started this video talking and bemoaning how do we adapt historical examples and understandings of communism to fit a contemporary viewing. And ironically, we're biffing it really hard on that analysis because you are actually fucking high if you think that because labor is specialized or skilled, it therefore becomes bourgeois. That's not how that works at all.
So similar to every other job now that the proletariat's value in their community has lost all distinction from the value of any other proletariat. Whereas before, every subjugated person, that is to say everyone who wasn't rich, each lived under separate modes of subjugation, the rise of industry created a proletariat class, one which was unified in their oppression in a way that never could have happened in a pre-industrial world. Now's a good time for me to interject.
Who is Marie Antoinette, you guys? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? So we have our examples here. A bourgeois describing a person who, through financial means, owns or manages the means of production or substance. Factory owners, landlords, shift supervisors. I'm sorry, but the shift supervisor at fucking Taco Bell is not bourgeois, you fucking idiot. You fucking moron. Proletariat is a person who's working a job that has been homogenized through industrialization or can otherwise be very easily replaced by management, line cooks, nurses. No! No, dude, nurses cannot be easily replaced. What are you talking about? You have to go to school to be a nurse? Hello? Hello? I hate evil white women who are nurses more than anyone, let me tell you, because there is a very special place in hell for white women who pursue nursing degrees. I totally agree. A nurse is not bourgeois. The fucking shift lead at fucking Panda Express is not bourgeois. Holy fuck.
By saying that anytime that I'm using communist jargon, like bourgeois or proletariat, I'll be flashing the definition on screen. You can also check the description for a list of definitions if you lose track of what I'm talking about at any point in this video. So, with this new productivity and this new post-feudal notion of free trade, the bourgeois class of business and property owners no longer needed to worry about adapting their mode of control to suit different cultures around the world, like feudal monarchs would have had to. Anywhere on the planet could be colonized, and all you would really need to do is open a few factories and offer some trades. And with extremely little training relative to what came before, you had a fresh new batch of workers, proletariats, to run your machines for you. Cultures worldwide were becoming homogenized so thoroughly under the universal language of factory work. Naturally, this endless need
You know, she's saying that because of the one bad shift supervisor she worked with at Starbucks. Yeah, very true. Very true. Wow. This is a watch, guys.
for expansion on the part of the bourgeoisie led to an incredible abundance of the things people needed to live. In a world where there is so much production that anybody can, in theory, go to a store and buy food or medicine or clothing or anything else, suddenly allocating those resources becomes a job in and of itself. Logistics becomes a job. The bourgeois class ensured its own survival by
Malcolm has all the IQ of a baked potato, so no, I don't think so.
Tesara di quinuf PPL vocallet ma cop cus i worket security.
It's just such a juvenile understanding of everything. It's embarrassing. She's going to be so embarrassed that she made this video. That is if she continues to learn. I don't think that she is going to continue to read or, consume more, like, any of this content after the fact. I think this is all just for, performative ego stroking. I don't think that she's going to continue on her journey of learning about this. If she does, she's going to be mortified by this video. This is fucking hilarious.
By creating such a surplus of provisions that ownership of those provisions became an important societal role in and of itself. And at the end of the day, that was the role that the bourgeois served to society. They managed all the resources that the proletariat created.
And you know what's really crazy? I got to tell you guys something crazy. Do you know what happens under communism? That role is replaced by the state. That role still exists. It's just filled by the state. It's still a role. It's still a thing. Like, supply and demand reflects some kind of need within society. And in communist and socialist countries, that is reflected in planned marketing. It's a controlled market. They set the prices. They determine how many goods are made, how many services are provided, and how much they pay for each of those. Like, that structure still exists. It's just controlled by the state. Like, we're not understanding that the criticism isn't just the system itself. The criticism is who controls the system. But she's criticizing this idea of a planned economy without understanding that communism is a planned economy. It's fascinating.
For them and used their control over their resources to both feed the proletariat and ensure that all of society would operate under their roles, the role of capital. The obvious implication here is that the bourgeois class is parasitic and is opportunistically grabbing power by taking for themselves a role that should be filled by the government. I bet you forgot that I was talking about the 1800s there for a second. That's what I mean when I say that this manifesto is incredibly apt. In the world of 2025, which is so thoroughly structured around computers and machines, working at a burger restaurant is incredibly similar to working at a retail store, and that's incredibly similar to being a receptionist at a doctor's office, and that's incredibly similar to being an Amazon driver. The vast majority of jobs now consist
Yeah, if you have like a 2-year-old's understanding of the world, sure. All those things are very similar, Leadhead, yes. In the same way that it's a job that's worked by human beings. Yeah, they're very similar. Yeah, true. Like, this is, wow.
Heavily of just operating a single station and inputting information into a machine of some kind. Data entry. Sometimes you tell the machine what to do, other times the machine tells you what to do, but human experience has been so thoroughly homogenized under the rule of capital and our subservience to its devices and its machines. Because the bourgeoisie and industrialization have homogenized all subjugated classes into a single new subjugated class, the proletariat's civil rights movement, described in the manifesto, becomes notable as a civil rights movement that's concerned with the rights of the vast majority instead of a minority. It's different than queer liberation or women's suffrage or anything like that because it's a movement that seeks to liberate all of us. So, if the bourgeois revolution is what created the proletariat, if it's what gave them the chains that we...
I really hope that she talks about class reductionism. That's my wish. No one spoil. I really want to hear her opinion on class reductionism. Because typically, what ends up happening is people are unable to divorce their identity politics, and they don't like class reductionism. And class reductionism is just the idea that the only distinction between people that matters in a capitalist society is class. That race and sex and orientation and disability status, all of this is equalized essentially by your financial status, that class is what determines your outcomes in society. And people that find their way into leftism by, wanting to look cool on Twitter, they don't like class reductionism because they still like the specialness of being disabled. They still like the specialness of being trans. They love the specialness of being neurodivergent and queer and, a minor or whatever. They love the identity politics, and they have a really hard time letting that go because one of the biggest homogenizing thoughts that unites communist thought specifically is class reductionism. So I'm really curious about her takes on class reductionism. I'm betting that we don't like it. My money's on we don't like it. That's my money. I'll take 3-1 odds on that. 3-1 odds that she thinks class reductionism is stupid.
Beware, why not just go back to what we had before, back to feudalism? Well, on top of feudalism having its own massive list of problems, there simply was no going back. You can't undo an industrial revolution. Nobody is going to want their society to produce less food just so that we can all go back to living in tiny villages that can't support massive populations but do allow for individual artisans to express themselves more in their craft. Nobody's just going to throw away a machine that can stitch 100 threads of wool together in the time it takes an unaugmented person to stitch a single thread. Nobody wants to just surrender all of the imported goods that they enjoy so much. No, in my mind, the type of communism that Marx describes in this manifesto is solely a response to industrialization. It's not how do we create a society that has no need for a proletariat class, it's the age of industry is the age of the proletariat, of the machine worker. So how do we structure society in a way that's fair to this new type of worker? Basically, it comes down to we can make all this food, all these railroads, all these buildings. How do we use this ability to better humanity's material conditions instead of just using it to ensure that power remains in its owner's hands? Well, that is where we get to the core concept behind communism. That's where this thing stops being a critique of the bourgeoisie and becomes a manifesto of how we could create something better. How can we arrange the pieces of this brave new world into something that honors the people who make it work?
How can we do
That's
that?
where we get to abolishing ownership. This part of the manifesto almost caught me off guard. So much of it's
Oh my god. She's gonna misunderstand private and collective ownership.
first section is seemingly centered around this longing for the old world before the bourgeois revolution. The manifesto speaks very highly of the world in which people used to own their own shops and have free choice over what comes of the things that they own. Well, the manifesto's argument against this is that the bourgeois class is already well on its way to abolishing ownership. The only difference is that they're abolishing ownership solely for the worker, not for themselves. Under the bourgeois rule, we don't truly own our time. We don't own our homes. We don't even really own our families.
Yeah, Mein Kampf was actually written about my struggle with my refrigerator, too.
We're forced to give our time and our dreams and our passion to business owners so that we can afford to rent our homes, and we sell our children to this system because it's the only way to ensure that they continue living in anything even resembling comfort. I don't really think it's fair to say that Marx thought that the world would be better without ownership or personal property or families. That's still an angle to communism where my opinions are muddied and confused even after reading this. But the manifesto is about how to structure a world now that things like ownership and family have already been compromised and can never be made pure again. If you don't like the idea of not being able to own your house or your car, don't blame the communists. Blame the bourgeois who created that system, because odds are very good that you live in a house that the bank or landlord can just take away whenever they want to. Right now, I'm in a small town that was utterly decimated by Hurricane Helene some 10 months ago. It was never a town that contributed much to the local industry in the area. It mostly consists of just small mom and pop shops. I'll tell you right now, though, I've been down these roads plenty of times for my videos, or just for any reason, really. And almost 10 months after the storm, practically none of the damage has been repaired. And honestly, that is
Well, and so this is more so a question of this would be a good example to this is where you would pivot and you would argue for a better system of like governmental oversight through the lens of communism. But I have a feeling that we're not going to do this because the other example that you can look to for this is going to be Hurricane Katrina with the Army Corps of Engineers, who had the money, the time, and the resources, and plenty of on-the-ground examples of levees that could withstand a Category 4 or 5 storm, which the levees in Katrina could not. The argument that she's about to make, and I can see all timelines simultaneously. The argument that she's about to make is because the small town in which she lived didn't produce much capital. That because this was like a little town, there weren't any like Walmart supercenters, there weren't any mega go fuck yourself stores that are making money for the millionaires and the billionaires across the country, that they were allowed to essentially be struck by Hurricane Helene and then have no effort from the government to step in and try and help them rebuild. And the truth of the matter is that this is not a question of productive capital. This is a question of the government, one, not wanting to take ideas from other countries, wanting to do things from the ground up. For example, healthcare. We can copy and paste universalized healthcare from other countries who do it very well. We choose not to. We could have copy pasted the levy system that they use in Holland. We chose not to. We wanted to do it ourselves. And the Army Corps of Engineers is arguably, you know, the best engineers in the entire world, et cetera, et cetera. Hurricane Katrina destroyed New Orleans, which was a major economic hub, produced a lot of revenue for New Orleans, for the state of Louisiana, and had really good ports, bays, all this other shit for trading internationally, domestically, et cetera, et cetera. This is like an economic area that is worth protecting, and the government still chose not to. And there are parts of New Orleans that are still destroyed to this day and will never be rebuilt because of what happened during Hurricane Katrina. So she's going to use this argument while completely ignoring that this is a structural failure on behalf of the government. This isn't a question of bourgeois politics. This isn't a question of the government only wanting to protect capital. This is a question of, one, the government wanting to build everything from the ground up and not looking to other countries for direction or guidance. And two, this is an issue of a direct ignoring of climate change and like global climate catastrophes that are going to continue to happen. This is not a question of protecting commerce. Because if it was, then Hurricane Katrina never would have happened. And all of New Orleans would be rebuilt right now. But unfortunately, we're really fucking stupid and don't have the ability to do any kind of critical analysis outside of, I read this book, everybody loves this book, I also think this book is good because everybody likes it, and it agrees with my worldview. So that's awesome.
Because this town was just a small, relatively self-sustaining economic bubble. I mean, my town, which is more economically globalized, it went through the ringer after Hurricane Helene, but it's back to normal now. It was back to normal 5 months ago. There's just a couple destroyed houses that have mostly been cleaned up, and a couple businesses went out of business, and new ones took their place. That's capitalism. This town, though, nothing at all. We got about 2 miles of road that's been paved there in the last 6 months since I made my Tyler the Creator video. You might recognize some of this wreckage from that one. And that's the only thing that's changed. Meanwhile, not 10 miles away from me is an interstate, which I'm not going to name, but an interstate that is getting another lane added. Imagine how much work that is. Imagine how much those same people could do in like one day if they were here.
Yeah, that's not a criticism of capital, right? That's a criticism of the failure for, you know, the government to take serious like climate catastrophe. It doesn't really have anything to do with commerce, so.
It's just shameful.
Damn, I have perfect foresight. Isn't that cool?
Especially because like a lane like that doesn't help people, that doesn't help citizens. All that does is help, you know, Walmart with its logistics network, make it easier for the truck drivers to get in between distribution centers.
True, if there was a Walmart, this never would have happened, I agree.
Stores. I'm getting off script. But my point is that even to the people who live here and don't lease their cars, the liberty of owning their own vehicle probably does not amount to much when the roads are useless like that and the state shows no interest in fixing them. And that's to say nothing of the driveways. I mean, God, I'm just talking about the main roads here. I bet there are driveways that have been inaccessible for 10, 11 months now. There's probably...
Well, driveways, babe, believe it or not, are personal property. That's something that you fix yourself. If you want ownership, if you believe that in private ownership, that is your responsibility to fix, so...
people who haven't even seen their home since they were evacuated during the hurricane. I bet there's like soaking, waterlogged, damaged family photo albums that nobody's been able to recover. And I can't imagine how it must have felt to live here, seeing all these other...
No, she doesn't understand the economic aspects of communism, and it's because she is purely aesthetic-driven, ironically, saying in the beginning, like identifying very clearly that this is her problem, is that she is aesthetic-driven, and then continues to fall into the loop of aesthetic-driven politics. Because again, communism is a economic ideology, but she likes all of the social aspects of communism, which is part of it, which is fine. I mean, I would never say like somebody should be a communist if they don't like the social idea of like collectivism and collective ownership and shit like that. Like that's obviously a part of it. But first and foremost, it's going to be an economic ideology. And if you don't understand the economics of it, then you're kind of just virtue signaling. You're just kind of like moral flagging, as the kids would say.
Economically globalized towns that surround
Young black economist, just another broke white crying. I disavow this message. I shake my head as I read this.
this one just be rebuilt so quickly in the aftermath of the storm, while everybody here is just left to their mourning, with practically zero state interest in putting this town's citizens' tax dollars to work for them. Ownership is a thing of the past for ordinary people, and that statement becomes less and less of an abstract projection every single day, as has been the case since well before the Communist Manifesto was ever even published. So while I could go on and on and on about the content of this manifesto, I do want to move on to more reading from more perspectives. However, there's one last thing that I'd like to add on to this chapter of the video. The Communist Manifesto, being in essence a propaganda piece, has this optimism that's weaved through it all. It talks at length about how the proletarian revolution against the bourgeoisie is an inevitability. The bourgeoisie ensured that all of its subjects would be living through such similar subjugation all over the world, and in doing so, the manifesto says that they've ensured their own
Well, Queen, if you were doing your rating, that would be dialectical materialism. It's like this is a pattern that's going to continue to happen as long as there's wealth inequality. Ironic. Again, you guys, she's never heard the tragedy of dialectical materialism. You guys, help.
Downfall by unifying the masses all over the world through the creation of the proletariat class. It posits that things like nationalism and bigotry will soon become things of the past because our individual cultures and
communism is nationalistic. What is she smoking right now? Communism is a nationalistic ideology because you protect and provide for members of the state. It's not like Soviet Russia was doing communism in like Uganda. Communism was for the citizens of the country. Yes. The idealism, of course, of a homogenized global communist state is certainly something that people are looking towards or hoping will happen or whatever. But yeah, unfortunately, it is very nationalistic because what did Thomas Paine say? You know, like all of mankind is my brethren, and to do good is my religion, right? I have no country, no creed. All of humanity is my country, basically. Yeah, that's like the idealized version of it. Of course, that's part, and this is where people get lost in the romanticization of the theory, because there's older writings, there's much older writings. I might have to get my book to look at this. There's older communist philosophers who believed that what human beings would do would live in harmony with nature and use animals to do labor for them, and not in the normal way where it's like you know, a horse that pulls a cart, in a very romanticized and idyllic understanding where like we would train like blue whales to tow ships for us so we wouldn't have to use motors, like shit like that. And that's why romantic communism is nothing more than like an intellectual like masturbatory session, because it's so idealistic and impractical that it's never going to happen, that anybody who writes in that genre of philosophy is laughed at. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my fucking head. It was like an early French philosopher, and he wrote about how human beings were quite literally going to harvest the power of nature in order to do labor for us. And that brand or that genre of communist thought died really quickly because it's impractical and it's idealistic and it doesn't inspire any kind of real movement or change because it's unattainable. You know, like if my goal is to make $1 billion tomorrow, that's not going to happen. If my goal is to make $500 in the next week or the next 2 weeks, okay, that's something that is probably pretty attainable and something that I can work for. If you're shooting so high that what you're trying to get is completely unattainable and so fantastical that it's never going to happen, you never make movement towards that goal. And that was the number one criticism of this romantic genre of communism, which is why it never took off, and which is why Leadhead loves it so much, is because it allows her to soapbox and pontificate on, you know, the beauties of and glory of idealistic communism, because there's no practical way to reach it. There's no practicality behind it, so it just makes you look like a sophist. And at the end of the day, that's what she is a sophist. She'll never fight in the trenches alongside her fellow proletariats. She will be hiding under her fucking puppy pee pad couch, trembling in fear when the revolution comes.
and national prides are being replaced with a unified, all-encompassing new human experience of post-industrial factory labor. And to be honest, it kind of makes sense. It's a pretty reasonable prediction, but what I think that Marx failed to predict is that the bourgeoisie would do everything in its power to protect itself, including doing all that it can to disguise the fact that all...
That's literally not true. Like, because the only one that you've read is the Communist Manifesto, of course you would think this. Like, Marx, Engels, and even later Lenin wrote
Malcolm
extensively
had all the
about this
IQ
exact
of a
problem.
baked potato, so no, I don't think so.
I livne a New Orleans en d'estil remember Catherine and Dieftermat. Sumany per subdicity ar estil agost down to this day. These arguments is making is causing my blood to boil.
This is certainly something that has already been discussed ad nauseum, but she would know that if she read something other than just the Communist Manifesto. Like, this is addressed. Communist Manifesto is actually the only book that Marx wrote, Drew. Very true.
All normal humans living under capitalism are having that shared experience. Since the time of the Manifesto's publication, the bourgeoisie has taken control of the media, and they've used that control to tell us that Chinese factories...
The bourgeois always had control of the media, dipshit. It was the elites that controlled the printing presses, because in the time, pre-industrial revolution, people could not read or write. Literacy rates were a joke. One of the crowning achievements of the Soviet Union was to, like, quadruple literacy rates in, like, 10 years. Yeah, the bourgeois did actually control media at that time as well. But I guess when you think that media is making shitty YouTube videos, you would believe that that's the only form of media. No. The bourgeois historically have always controlled media. Yeah.
are unsafe and unethical, a claim which grows increasingly antiquated with each year. They tell us that South and Central American economies are dominated by drug cartels and that Palestinians hate Americans. They tell us that African villages couldn't possibly survive without white apartheid exploitation. They tell us that there's always a worse job that we could end up working if we don't protect the status quo. They've spent every ounce of their media resources convincing the proletariat, this unified class of workers in an ever-increasingly homogenized ecosystem of employment, that there is no homogenization. They tell the white proletariat that they aren't sharing in the oppression of the black proletariat, or the transgender proletariat, or the Chinese proletariat. They have convinced the workers of the world that there's no such thing as the proletariat.
Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. This is... God. I remember my first beer. That's what this video is to me. This is so fucking painful for me to listen to. This hurts. This hurts, you guys. It hurts.
The bourgeoisie is the reason that we're all so racist and bigoted and unable to empathize with people who look and think differently than we do. Creating a racist, arbitrarily divided society was the only way they could stop us from realizing Marx and Engels' dream of a society that benefits from industrial...
There's the class reductionism right there. There's no white power or black power. There's only workers' power. And that's what the bourgeoisie fears, okay, is the unification of the masses. I'm really curious how this fits in, though, because, like, obviously Leadhead is a special snowflake and certainly is unable to dream of not being able to wield her identity for her own positive benefit. So I'm very curious how this fits into this class reductionism. I would like to learn more, please.
Industrialization instead of one that lives in eternal subjugation to it. And just look at World War II. There was a massive industrial boom in America during and after that.
Here we go. Here we go! Woo! It's autism time.
That war into it. And just look at World War II. There was a massive industrial boom in America during and after that war. A lot of people got factory jobs and unionized.
No, a lot of people did not get factory jobs and unionized during World War II. All the men were fighting. Actually, women in the workplace is a direct result of World War II because all the men were fighting and they needed somebody to work in the factories. Fun fact. What was the other thing she said?
There was a massive industrial boom in America during and after that war. A lot of people got factory jobs and unionized, and the quality of life for middle-class white Americans started to improve a bit, hence the baby boom. Jobs became that little bit more homogenized, and the bourgeois media's response was to spur on a Red Scare, and with it, a new era of American culture, one which would be fueled by nationalism and racial fear-mongering. Further...
Racial fear-mongering for Russians. Is Russia a race? Obviously, there were other entities involved in the Cold War, in the arms race, of course. But who was everybody concerned about here? Who was everybody concerned about in this era? It was the Russians who gave Cuba all the information on how to construct these missiles. It was Russia. Russia is who everybody was concerned about at the time. Who was involved in this conflict? Like, okay, tell me more.
Separating ourselves from our fellow proletariats in other countries, and other neighborhoods, and other factories. I do think it's also worth keeping a critical mind as I read this stuff. While I absolutely adore the fiery conviction with which Marx and Engels write, and think that their deconstruction of the tactics and consequences of the bourgeoisie are incredibly apt, there's one side of his perspective that I haven't been totally swayed on, and it's something far too important for me to maybe ever be able to call myself a Marxist.
Tell me about
the Manifesto posits that the bourgeois advent of mass industrialization has flung us into an inescapable future where concepts like family and individual cultures can't coexist with the societal good that comes from a proletarian running...
Oh my god, she can't have her fucking puppycule in the communist regime, you guys, so we have to throw this entire ideology in the garbage can. You're telling me I can't have my puppycule? I have to leave my puppycule at home? No, absolutely not.
Economy and production. While I'm pretty sure that I understand the nuances of their arguments,
Okay, hang on. I missed this. Let's go back a second. Hang on.
Inescapable future where concepts like family and individual cultures can't coexist with the societal good that comes from a proletarian-run economy and production. While I'm pretty sure that I understand the nuances of their argument, I can't say that I like the idea of simply surrendering to all these hypothetical consequences of the Industrial Revolution.
It's because you don't want communism. You want to reap the benefits of a communist society without paying your dues to said society, because the idea or the principle of it is that we all live in a state. It is the state's job to provide for us because we are citizens of the state, and because of that, we contribute to the state for the benefit of everyone. And unfortunately, for people like Leadhead, that means that you have to work. That means that you have to give something, you have to offer some kind of utility to the state and other people. You can't just be a bed blob leech that smokes cigarettes all day and walks around with a fucking Fujifilm camera. Unfortunately, you have to contribute to the state. That's the issue here. We don't want communism. We want to reap all the benefits of quote-unquote not working and not quote-unquote serving gestures vaguely capitalism without doing any of the work required to do it. That's the problem. And that's something that is one of the biggest criticisms of online leftists, is that the whole argument boils down to like, oh my God, guys, it would be so cool if we firebombed a Walmart, and then nobody does it. It's because it's all keyboard warrior, armchair bullshit. It's like, again, like I said at the beginning, it's very true. When the revolution comes, Leadhead will be the one that is hiding from it. Okay, like, these people are not revolutionaries, they're not visionaries, they're fucking burnout losers who just want to reap the social benefits of communism in a quote-unquote woke society where everybody does everything else for them. They want to take and never give. Part of altruism is giving in order to take, from each according to their ability to each according to their need, right? It doesn't matter what your abilities are. What matters is that you can provide for the state, and what matters is when you're providing for the state, you are providing a necessary service that you are able to contribute, and in turn, you reap the benefits that the state provides to you. This is crazy.
I'm of the opinion that even in a communist society, a culture of holistic, family-oriented thinking could very well be manifested in time if that was something, worth doing. I firmly believe...
I wonder if she's going to talk about birth rates in the USSR. She seems to really be into the USSR, which I agree, that's probably the most interesting... That's the most, like, rich history of communism is going to be coming from the USSR. That's where you're going to get a lot of it, mostly because of, like, xenophobia and shit like that. It's going to be hard to parse through a lot of any of the writings or any of the readings from Asian communist countries. Probably your best bet would be Vietnam. Other than that, you're kind of fucked. However, she's very, very, very hyper-fixated on Soviet Russia and the USSR, which, same girl. I'm really curious if she's going to talk about the birth rates. And what they did to... Well, no, she's not, because she doesn't know the fucking history. She's not going to talk about it. Who am I kidding? Who am I kidding? I have way too high hopes for this.
That we can make a culture where the bonds between a parent and child are tightened, and the damage to family integrity that's been dealt by the bourgeois class could be repaired. I understand that a focus on one's own family over the larger community is an inherently individualistic notion, but
yes,
I can't help but feel like maybe it's too fatalistic to treat the breaking up of families and the homogenization of world cultures under the epoch of industrialization as inevitabilities. Liberating women from the oppression of the patriarchal family unit and keeping family bonds sacred don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive in my mind.
Well, and if you want to romanticize the USSR and that specific kind of Marxist-Leninism, something that you must understand and you must accept and you must agree to, if that's the brand of communism that you want to get into, is that the nuclear family is something that's incredibly important. High birth rates equals workers. Workers equals good. And the preservation of the family unit is very important to communist society. It's very important, the preservation of the family unit. And because we can't have our fucking degenerate, like, puppy pee pad, puppy cool, suddenly we're like, I don't know about this communism stuff, you guys. It's crazy. Very interesting.
And I say this because of my own lived experience. While, like I said earlier, my connection with my biological family isn't too strong right now, the people in my house act as a family unit in a way that I think is just as valid and meaningful as any literal blood relation.
Degenerate and to the gulag immediately.
In one way, I think that that's exactly what Marx and Engels were talking about in regards to abolishing the family structure, but in another way, I think it could be seen as kind of the opposite. Sharing in group struggles with this new family of mine is what opened my mind up to any of the things that I'm saying in this video.
You guys, but Marx would not gulag me. You guys, I'm one of the good ones. Marx wouldn't gulag me.
Seeing the impact that this small exposure to group thinking has had on me, it's kind of hard for me to imagine that a homogenized culture which traded its small family bonds for a global bond with every other human would be able to maintain the empathy necessary to live up to the actual motive of communism, a wholly equal, classless...
Well, of course you wouldn't, because altruism is an aesthetic for you. It's not a way of life. It's not a principle. People who are truly altruistic have no qualms with, you know, like, caring about and sacrificing for people who are not in their immediate family. Certainly. Yes, it's because it's an aesthetic for you, Leadhead. That's the problem.
Society. Maybe as I think about this more, I'll change my mind in some way, but as much as I enjoyed reading the Communist Manifesto, I won't be calling myself a Marxist unless that abandonment of small cultures is somehow reconciled in my mind as anything other than
Thank God.
inevitability.
Thank God. My culture is not your fucking costume, bitch. Get out! Nobody wanted you here.
Dealt by the bourgeoisie. I should say now that the part of this video is going to be me discussing all this stuff with my found family who might have different perspectives from me. After all, no opinion should be formed in isolation, so all of this is really subject to change by the end of the video. But for now, put simply, I have an extremely hard time trusting globalization. A world globalized under communism sounds a lot better than one globalized under capitalism, and I can understand how the threats of a capitalist revolution might...
Globalization is literally the only reason that you're allowed to live your gooner degen lifestyle. Use that fancy fucking camera, that little detachable microphone. That is the result of globalization. You're welcome.
Necessitate the need for a globalized communist state, but I don't think that globalization is necessarily an inevitability that we must surrender so thoroughly to. I don't know. I hope that you can see how already, after just one short little morning of reading theory, my mind has been expanded already.
Dude, after reading one page of the Communist Manifesto, my life has been changed. These are like the bitches that go on, you know, ayahuasca trips in Peru and they get fucking one-shotted and get their entire brains reorganized by like a Mesopotamian demon. And then they're like, oh my God, I have to quit my job and, you know, join a traveling circus, like MLM scheme. Like, your mind is quite literally this consistency of Play-Doh. If reading one book changes your entire political, economic, and social philosophy, you are a waste of a human being.
I gotta say, I didn't really expect for the effect of reading this stuff to be immediate and profound like this when I first had the idea for the video. But while I originally intended to have Marx's magnum opus, Das Kapital, planned as my next book I would read...
Dude, you could never. Subway Surfers doesn't play on the side when you read. Das Kapital is a read. That is a read. Your feeble puppy brain could not comprehend. That's so fucking funny. And it's even funnier that she mentions in here that she wasn't able to read it. That's so fucking funny.
I think I want to take things in a slightly different direction. The
Communist
Manifesto is about a very...
We don't want to read any other Marx. No, we can't do that.
...particular kind of communism. One that was born almost solely as a response to the bourgeois revolution and the industrial revolution.
I'm so scared, bro.
I'd like to know a bit more about communist philosophy that wasn't interpreted through the lens of Western culture, but one from the East, where collectivism has, through agricultural practices, civil rights movements, and religious philosophy has been a core component of the societal zeitgeist for millennia.
Please don't talk about Vietnam.
I'm talking about China here. Let's read some now.
Still not great, but thank God, okay. Well, I mean, Tyler, the Creator, changed her life the first time. The second time it was Karl Marx, and then the third time it's going to be Mao, yeah.
Chosen to go with On Contradiction, an essay that Mao Zedong, founder of the People's Republic of China and chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, wrote in 1937 in the throes of revolution and Chinese war with Japan. It was written as a cautionary piece against dogmatism in the Chinese Communist Party, demonstrating how mechanical materialism led previous Chinese revolutions to fail or be undone. That's a lot of words. To be honest, I felt very stupid over the first couple paragraphs.
Me and all the homies rock the Mao fade. If you guys don't have a Mao fade, what the fuck are you doing, okay? That guy knew how to wear a haircut, okay?
This essay, it was like I was reading ancient philosophy, just utterly confused by the context surrounding every term that was thrown my way, like mechanical materialism. To be honest, there's still a lot that I probably missed after just one reading, but let me tell you now.
Wow, guys, we read a book one time. We read a philosophy book one time, and we think that's enough.
That, just like with the Communist Manifesto, I feel utterly enlightened by what I was able to grasp. The reason I say any of this is to encourage you to not be afraid of complicated language. Don't tell yourself that reading some complex piece of theory is above your mental pay grade. I
mean, it's above your mental pay grade if you read it one time and you think that you absorbed it. Yeah, it is above your mental pay grade if you were stupid enough to believe that you can read any writings, philosophical writings, and absorb it all in one go. Delusional.
Promise that you can manage it if you focus and reread anything that's lost on you until you do understand it. And you stand to gain a lot by doing so.
Just keep reading.
Anyways, let's get into what I got out of this essay. But not without first going into this little anecdote that I think holds a lot of relevancy to this entire thing.
I love an anecdote.
Let's talk about Fordlandia. You know Ford cars? Well, Henry Ford, the brand's namesake, was
Fordlandia.
an obsessive American industrialist in the 1920s, credited with the
Also, this bitch like LARPs as a car girl as well and doesn't know shit about cars. This is just so funny. Like, everything about her is so performative and fake. It's so funny to me.
invention of the assembly line. He vertically integrated his car company, meaning everything from logistics to assembly to engineering to mining and processing raw materials was handled in-house with infrastructure that Ford himself owned. His factories could churn out a Model T car in 93 minutes at their peak efficiency. By the way, don't mistake praise. Henry Ford, in 1928, didn't like how he had to bend the knee to the global economy to provide his factories with rubber. So, in true Factorio style, he founded a small town in Brazil called Fordlandia.
Dude, she's basing her entire economic philosophy off of fucking Factorio. Okay, Destiny, Jesus Christ!
Made entirely out of prefabricated homes modeled after American suburbs, and put the locals to work producing rubber from the Amazonian trees. Ford made sure that these Brazilian workers ate a U.S.-American diet of brown rice, whole wheat bread, canned peaches, and oatmeal. He had them living in American suburban houses which were in no way equipped to handle the humidity or general ecology of a rainforest, and banned tobacco and alcohol for any of his workers, whether they were on the clock or not. Fordlandia was shut down in 1934, just 6 years after its founding, and not a single ounce of Fordlandian rubber ever made it into an actual car. This was all just a calculated risk on Ford's part, how he played with these people's lives. I think that the popularity of the F-150, which there's one right there, shows that he did not suffer much from this little business venture. But Fordlandia is also a fantastic example of the perils of mechanical materialism, and this is where we can bring it back to Mao.
And she's also going to make the argument that supply chains are bad. This is we have Demon Mama at home. This sucks.
Mechanical materialism is the idea that things can only be changed by external factors, and that the internal state of all things is static and unchanging, totally knowable. It's kind of a tough concept to wrap your head around, so let me try to give you a few examples of mechanical materialism that you might encounter in your day-to-day life. You know the rhetoric that so often gets passed around that the job market in the US was fine, and it only worsened because of a rise in immigration? Or how about when people say that Disney movies turn their son gay?
Do you wonder if she knows what the Heart Cellar Act is? This is so funny.
Or hell, how about the classic incel narrative that nowadays you have to be at least 6 feet tall to find a girlfriend? Well, those arguments are all pretty much completely fallacious. They treat the US job market, the son's sexuality, and the incel sex appeal as things that are inherent and can only be changed by external factors. The decline in the job market isn't because capitalism rewards sending jobs overseas. Your son didn't just need a bit of time to realize he was gay. The incel hasn't just slowly developed a hatred of women that immediately squanders his chance of getting a girlfriend. Capitalism and your son and the incel were all fine until this external force changed them or changed their conditions. That's the mechanical materialist perspective, according to Mao. Everything is static and can only be changed by an external factor. The proletariat was perfectly happy until Marx started putting all of these ideas in their heads. I am, of course, simplifying things, but the logical conclusion to this line of thinking is that if you can control the external factors, you can control the internal development of a subject. Just homeschool your kids and ban Disney in the household, because that'll totally stop them from being gay. Or, in Ford's case, if I make all these people in Fordlandia who live a continent away from me live within my cultural sensibilities, surely the rubber farm will be just as successful as any of my domestic.
Well, we're broadening the scope like way too much here. We're broadening the scope way too much, because the reality of the matter is that external factors and internal factors like don't exist in isolation and are constantly playing off of each other. Because if Leadhead's understanding of this is correct, spoiler, it isn't, material conditions would never dictate revolutionary conditions, because it's an external state of being, right?
Business ventures. I think it goes without saying that none of this mechanical materialism really checks out, but before we get into the alternative, dialectical materialism, let's talk for a moment about where this fallacy of mechanical materialism originates from.
And then she reads this one time, thinks that she's absorbed it well enough, and thinks that she has the capabilities to critique it in any kind of meaningful way. Gulag.
It comes from a desire to have a complete, immutable set of answers to everything, pretty much. Here in the West, we call it the law of non-contradiction. The basic example is that a building can't be both red and not red at the same time, because that would be contradictory. That's a factual enough statement and an attractive notion to base your understanding of the world around, but even something as seemingly fundamental and obvious as the law of non-contradiction has its flaws. We'll get to those in a moment. This idea of non-contradiction more or less originated in ancient Greek philosophy, back when philosophy and science were basically the same field, and has been the basis for a lot of the Western perspective on the world. Ultimately, it serves us well.
Well, and the problem is realistically, kind of the whole running theme here is that Leadhead doesn't understand any of this, because there are people who are, LGBTQIA+, who are communists, who are socialists, who are Marxists, and it's because they apply the principles and the teachings. It's the same way, if I can draw a very loose comparison, that there are people who are LGBTQIA that are Christian, that are Muslim, that are Catholic, because you can take the preachings, the principles, the teachings, the ideas, things like that, and then apply it in a way where the values of whatever that thing is that you're ascribing to match your worldview. And I think that that's fair, but we're looking at this through a really perverted lens, because we're idealizing societies that would have treated us poorly, while also failing to misunderstand the mechanics of how those societies would function. And on top of that, it's a diluted understanding of like the historical context of all of this. It's just it's the Dunning-Kruger effect in real time, and it's very, very insufferable to listen to.
Well enough, but it's also set us up to be a society obsessed with categorization. Weather is either good or bad, but never both. Immigration is either a good or a bad thing, but never both. Politicians are either right or left, but never both. This is why Kamala Harris is unironically being called a socialist by right-wing media, and why Jack Black thinks that Joe Biden is punk rock.
No, it's actually just because people like to demonize the other. It doesn't really have to do with the categorization effect. It has more to do with, one, a misunderstanding of these terms, and then two, like dirty politics. You're just kind of accusing the other of being something that everybody is scared of. It's kind of like how for a while there during the pandemic era way back in the day, if anybody can remember, anybody who disagreed with anybody who was a person of color on anything, they were racist. Like, people love to point and categorize people as like in the bad group. It's politics, really. It isn't unique to this situation, but
categorizations like these make vast, nuanced concepts easily digestible. The appeal is plain to see, frankly, but this obsession with non-contradictory categorization is the conduit through which capitalism turns into imperialism, as we see demonstrated by Fordlandia. The same general idea applies to every non-American McDonald's or Walmart. In a capitalist government, these corporate billboards serve the exact same function as a flag, planted in the middle of a foreign country. So that's the Western perspective.
Well, does she not understand how franchises work either? Because you can make the argument pretty clearly that the franchised like companies are not, they're more so socialistic and communistic than other non-franchised businesses, because the way that McDonald's works and the way that a lot of fast food chains work, and yes, McDonald's is like symbolically really important to America. It's like when people think of America, they think of McDonald's, of course. However, franchisement is a way for workers to actually scale appropriately within a business model, and in turn get some semblance of control or ownership over the means of production in a Marxist sense. Because what franchising is I live in Alabama and I think it's like 20 grand to franchise a McDonald's. That's my McDonald's. That is my McDonald's. I have a list of things that I either have to serve or like certain policies that I have to follow in order to be associated with the McDonald's brand. Like if I stop selling Big Macs at my McDonald's, not really a McDonald's anymore because McDonald's sells Big Macs, right? Or if I decide, actually, guys, we're not going to sell hamburgers anymore. We're going to sell chicken sandwiches only. That's not really McDonald's. So you sign an agreement, and that is your McDonald's. You are in control of it. It is a locally owned business at that point that falls under the collective ownership of McDonald's that has connections for you to pop up a store anywhere that you want. Within the traditional sense of Marxist analysis, franchising is the closest way to attain collective ownership in America specifically right now. It's very similar to Mondragon in Spain, where it is, in fact, collective ownership, and you get to decide as somebody who is participating in this billion-dollar franchise. She doesn't even know what a fucking franchise is. She doesn't even know what a franchise is, guys. Holy fuck.
Stating that contradiction is impossible, and the myriad philosophical fallacies that stem from this basis for thought. But I'm in the middle of a video about communism, and the Sprite tastes delicious. So let's talk about Mao's perspective on dialectical materialism, the study of the contradiction within all things. So this is where things start to get...
God, did she just like Google AI what dialectical materialism is? Oh my god.
Get a little bit more abstract for me. Mao describes all things as having contradictions within them. A trash can is hopefully the dirtiest part of your house, but it's also the thing that enables you to keep your house clean. Beautiful flowers can just as easily be seen as weeds depending on the context. Happiness can't exist without sadness. Peace can't exist without war. The bourgeoisie led a progressive revolution, but were bound to become reactionary once in power. Mao argues that this isn't because the bourgeoisie changed, but because the bourgeoisie has always had the traits of both the oppressor and the oppressed within it. It's starting to come together, but like I said, it still feels a little bit abstract. Let's see if we can apply this to some more specific scenarios.
I like how she has to talk through it like it's a word essay response on like on a test, where if I talk enough, I'll eventually get something right. You know, everybody loves short answer tests because you have the opportunity to talk yourself into the right answer. If this was a multiple choice quiz, we would have failed miserably.
As we see if this dialectical materialism can be useful in everyday life. Anyone who's been following me over the last year or so will know that found family has become a big focal point in my life.
Oh fuck, here we go. Hell yeah, let's go.
Rachel, as I aliased her in my previous video, was pretty much a member of this found family. I'm not going to get into it again, but she was an incredibly abusive person. My dogmatic...
Okay, so let's give a little bit of context here. Hang on, let's back up really quick, okay?
family has become a big focal point in my life. A certain person, Rachel, as I aliased her in my previous video, was pretty much a member of this found family.
So Rachel's previous alias was Ashley. So Leadhead made a video where she's like, quote unquote, taking accountability. This was one of the first videos that I watched of hers. And it's this horrible video where she's like talking about taking accountability in cheating in her relationship. So in this video, she calls this person Ashley. Now she's calling her Rachel. This person was someone who she cheated on her significant other with at the time. So she was dating this person. I don't think that, so there's a bunch of different people in the queue here. Hang on. There's a bunch of different people in the queue here. Let's see if we can kind of map this out a little bit. So there's Leadhead, who is Penny. Okay, so that's who this is. She has GF, that's what she's called, who is now wife. We don't meet this person, like, ever. You never see this person. This person is very disconnected from the YouTube channel. There is Boy, who is adopted son. Boy is, like, early 20s, very socially maladjusted. So we have, like, 20 trans, and I'm pretty sure that Boy is the one that's autistic, but I don't remember. Something like that. And Boy has a really problematic, strained relationship with his family. There's also Girl, who is an adopted daughter. I think that Girl is like 20s as well. Girl is very socially stunted, and trans. Girl moved from another state to come and live with Leadhead, and Leadhead describes Girl as having like no friends, no connection, no understanding that the people that she's talking to online are real people, that these are all just like figments of her imagination, and that when Girl moved in with Leadhead, she was like, oh my god, these people on the screen are actually real people. Crazy. She also details like pretty extensively, extensively kind of the process of all these things in one of her older videos. It's one of the ones that I watched. And then, so she mentions this person named Ashley in one of the very first videos that I watched. And so this person named Ashley was somebody who was a mutual friend between her and her wife. And Leadhead was having an affair with this Ashley person. And what ended up happening is this Ashley person was like, we can't keep doing that, whatever the fuck. For some reason, the wife or the girlfriend finds out about this. And Leadhead calls this, quote unquote, the biggest mistake of her life. And she was very, very resentful towards Ashley because Ashley was like, I don't regret it. I do love you. I want to be with you. And so she would talk about how it was really hard for her to rebuild her relationship with her wife, and that part of the way that she connects with other people is through sex, flirting, and intimate relationships. And that because of this situation with Ashley, she was able to convince her wife to open up their relationship. Another thing that's important to note here is Boy, her adopted Discord son, essentially, that moved in with her. This is somebody who she describes as meeting them and seeing them as a potential partner, and then later deciding that actually they would be a better child. So the whole thing is actually fucking insane. In the Tyler, the Creator video, it was alluded to, it was brought up very loosely that this Ashley person, who's called Rachel in here for some reason, that this person was abusive towards Leadhead, and that was the very first time that allegation was ever mentioned. So I'm curious to see if what is this new lore that we're dropping here. Let's hear more about Rachel, aka Ashley. Let's hear more about this. The other person that has extensive lore on Leadhead is actually Beckett. Beckett has watched a lot more of Leadhead's coverage than I have. It is hypothesized. I don't think it's true. Actually, I don't think it's true. Beckett had said that he thought for a little bit there that Ashley was actually the adopted daughter. No, that Ashley was Boy, who then transitioned. But obviously that doesn't hold true if Leadhead is now levying allegations of like abuse and shit like that. But nonetheless, the other person that has a ton of lore on this is Beckett. So if you want more, I think I covered 3 or 4 of Leadhead's videos and the Tyler, the Creator one. If you want more lore, Beckett did a couple of streams on Leadhead, and he watches a lot more of her stuff than I do. So he's a little bit more intricately aware of a lot of this stuff, and he puts out some good shit. He puts out some good shit in regard to Leadhead.
I'm not going to get into it again, but she was an incredibly abusive person. My dogmatic devotion to the idea of family being able to work through anything was blinding me to the fact that letting her continue to walk all over myself and the people that I love was hurting all of us. In my mind, she was family, and we were stuck with her, and that was a blessing. And a notion that I now see...
And I want to know in what universe we fuck family. That's insane. This was my family. This was my found family, but I fucked her. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? This is family, but we fucked? Question mark? What?
was nothing but mechanical materialism, I thought that I could change who she was by changing her circumstances.
You guys, if you actually sit down and think about my affair through the lens of mechanical materialism and the history of communism, you could see clearly. Like, please fucking kill me, guys.
Giving her forgiveness and trusting her to do the right thing and making sure that she had all the same social resources that have helped me to grow so much over the last few years. I thought, well, family's good and she's family, so it must be some external factor that's making her act so violently and dishonestly. Mechanical materialism, the law of non-contradiction, says that I could have changed who she was by changing her environment. Dialectical materialism, or the study of contradiction, makes it clear to me that though she is family, keeping her in the family could actually be making us less of a family. See,
wow. And then hit him with the sad piano.
Isn't just about understanding the contradictions within things. It's about using that understanding to address those contradictions. Now, all connections between her and us have been severed, and frankly, we're all living much happier lives because of it. There's this inherent discomfort that comes from acknowledging the negative, contradictory side of things that are supposed to be positive, but according to Mao, doing so isn't... It's completely...
Baby, you would not believe what Mao has to say about a relationship. Let me tell you about it.
...necessary, not only to the scientific method, but just to any sort of decision-making. It seems obvious, right? You need to make a decision, so you weigh the pros and cons, but it goes so much deeper than that. The happiness that I have now is the result of so much sadness that I've willingly put myself through. The material conditions of my life, comfort and camaraderie and my little house with my friends, those conditions aren't a result of any external changes. The people behind the camera right now didn't just appear in my life magically. No, I changed on my own into somebody who deserves all the love that I'm surrounded.
No, that's actually not true. The reality is, and this is, what we're doing is we're taking a Marxist or a Maoist or some kind of communist lens and using it to interpret our own moral failings and justify them retroactively. Because the reality is that these people did not come into your life because you changed yourself. These people came into your life because you have ultimate control over them. There have been several instances in a lot of the videos that she's made where she talks about taking their phones away, where she talks about, choosing what's good and what's bad for them, right? Like, this is for all intensive purposes, a cult-like environment, absolutely. And it is profoundly stupid to try and use some kind of communistic leftist lens to justify and analyze your mistreatment of other human beings and chalk it up to, well, I was the one that changed. No, you are deeply manipulative, which is something that Leadhead admits herself. She says openly and regularly that she is indeed a deeply manipulative person that will, twist and contort things to get what she wants out of a situation. She said that about herself. So, no, actually, you've done nothing to deserve this. You deserve nothing because you are manipulative. And you are essentially holding people hostage in your home. It's actually quite sick, and it's quite disgusting. And honestly, this fucking troll aesthetic is insane. It's insane to me. It's insane. This is like a troll under the bridge, B505. Bell Rookie, why must the most wholesome and fluffy feeling I get from found family be ruined by these sinful people? Everybody witness, please. Because evil people love using good things in order to reap the benefits of it while facing none of the consequences for acting evil. Yeah.
Surrounded with. And that change was only possible because I understood that just as there's a caring and compassionate friend inside of me, there's an equally plausible timeline where I'm a lying, self-interested scumbag.
You are.
The capacity for both of those things has always existed inside of me, and it's only by constantly reminding myself of that fact.
If you think about it, I'm very dialectical, like Marx would say.
That I was able to build these pro-social habits that make these people love me.
Cool, thanks for including this. It was really helpful.
What really caught me off guard about all this non-contradiction versus material dialectic stuff is that, as it turns out, the law of non-contradiction, which sounds so scientific and all-encompassing, turned out to be the idealistic one, which lended itself so well to ignorance and naivete, while the inherently spiritual-sounding yin-yang adjacent study of the contradictions within all things turned out to be the more objective and, honestly, the more correct way of thinking. As an atheist, I really was not expecting to be so thoroughly grabbed by these ideas, which are in such deep harmony with Eastern spirituality. Contrast this with Christianity.
Oh my god, she's a Buddhist too. Holy fuck, dude.
Which is so heavily focused on the adversarial relationship between good and evil. There are unambiguously evil things that you can do according to Christian dogma, and cutting out all negativity of your personality is more or less the objective of practicing Christianity, because that's how you get into heaven. Nobody ever told me growing up that God and the devil needed each other, or were two sides of the same coin. Some things are objectively good, and some things are objectively bad, and the objectively bad things need to be eliminated from your personhood.
Yes.
And that's the Christian philosophy.
Oh. What? Yeah, bad things are bad and good things are good. To be a good person, you do good things, and to be a bad person is to do bad things. And if you want to be good, you have to abstain from doing bad things. Yeah. What? Yes, that isn't just like a Christian. That's like, what? What?
What's really interesting about this distinction to me is that under Christianity, this religion that's so focused on non-contradiction, eventually people started disagreeing with some of the sins, and the Protestant movement started encouraging everybody to read the Bible for
The Protestant movement started because King Henry VIII wanted to get a divorce, and they wouldn't let him, because you can't get a divorce in Catholicism. What is the Great Schism? It exists as a protestation of the Catholic faith because King Henry VIII wanted a divorce because his wife couldn't produce a son. Oh my fucking god. It's like anything that she talks about is conveniently something that I care about, and she just fucking sucks. Dude, this is so fucking gay. I don't want to watch this anymore.
Themselves. And Western individualism really started getting a foothold culturally then. Nowadays, we have not in my backyard rhetoric, and if you're a good person, you'll be successful in your career, and if you're in America, you better speak English. Everyone is so focused on their subjective experience of life in the West, and that's what individualism really is. Individualism is focusing on your subjective view of how your life is supposed to be, and collectivism is focusing on how you objectively factor into...
She's like speed running into cult shit with this collectivism everything, because she's using like the text examples of collectivism and altruism in like Marxism to justify like why everybody has to like do what she wants to do. This is like, we are rapidly approaching like Ruby Ridge and like fucking Jonestown levels of justification for our behavior. This is crazy.
The greater nuances of the world. It's worth noting now that Mao was, by and large, an atheist, though reverent of his Buddhist mother. I just think it's kind of interesting to link these different cultural sensibilities, collectivism versus individualism, dialectical materialism versus mechanical materialism, to the dominant spiritual philosophies of these different regions. Of course, this is, in and of itself, kind of a slippery slope to racist rhetoric. Ascribing one person's entire being to the culture they grew up within would be fallacious, racist, just classic mechanical materialism. But to say that the two aren't related in any way would also be fallacious. In reality, a person and the culture that they exist...
So what I'm hearing from Leadhead is you could be a little racist as a treat. That's what I'm hearing.
...within affect each other. In any event, the main thing that I'm talking about here is just Mao's interpretation of philosophy that was propagated by Marx, Engels, Stalin, and Lenin, all of whom were raised amongst Western religions. So, really, take all of this collectivism, playing into communism stuff, take it all with a grain of salt. It's just something
Take everything with a grain of salt, because you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. Let's keep cruising along. We're almost done. Let's keep cruising.
I've been thinking about. And that's more or less what I got out of On Contradiction by Mao Zedong. To be honest, I really, really liked what he had to say. His interpretation of dialectical materialism is interesting and insightful, and something that is just incredibly applicable both to my own understanding of the forces within my day-to-day and the general cultural ethos.
It's like he wrote that book about me, guys. It's crazy.
That would propagate itself throughout communist society. I also don't think that I'm anywhere near knowledgeable enough about the life of Mao, the history of the People's Republic of China, or the pre-existing philosophies that influenced those things, or the horrors of war and revolution which those philosophies were tested against, to be able to call myself a Maoist. But I'm going to be reading a lot more about these ideas in this period. And
we're just trying on different identities to see what gets us the most social street credit. Embarrassing.
Once I'm finished with this video. That said, I'm starting to think that I might not be able to settle on a single branch of communism by the time I'm finished with this video. After all, I've only read 2 books, and I've still got a lot of reading ahead of me, you know, once I finish this thing.
Oh,
so
sorry, guys.
I suppose we should move on now.
Sorry, guys. Wow, this is so brave. So brave.
You know, something that I keep telling myself as I work on this video is that certain conclusions are load-bearing. I tell myself that I need a firm understanding of the character of Mao Zedong for this video to be complete, or that I need to end the video with some sort of action, something that puts a bit of this theory into practice, setting up a food drive or a tool library or something. I've been incredibly insecure over the course of this script because I know that the people to the right of me will call me an apologist for the ugly side of revolution, and those to the left of me will...
Girl, you're not fighting any revolutionary wars, let's be so real.
Call me a tourist, because I haven't yet gone deep enough to prove that this stuff means more to me than just a YouTube video. I keep telling myself that if I'm going to go through the effort of making and publishing this undoubtedly controversial video and push through all of that self-doubt...
It's very controversial. This is from... What, we got 2K views? Wow.
I better have the be-all, end-all, perfect video about communism. And to be honest, that's non-dialectical of me. If the entire point of this video is to motivate you all to read, why would I be trying to make a video that individually answers each and every question that my audience might have? Like I said in the beginning,
it doesn't. We've answered 0 questions. You're just fucking rambling.
I want you to leave this video with questions about yourself, not answers about me. Moreover, me seeking to make the perfect, most complete communism video has given me, in some subtle way, a transactional relationship with this literature. In general, I've got a bit of a problem where I'm obsessed with optimizing every avenue of my life. Just look at that cigarette machine that I was using earlier.
Yeah.
In other words, I think I need some time for this stuff to stew in me a little bit. My perspective has already changed so drastically just from reading the Communist Manifesto, and even more so.
Yeah, it's because you have no real sense of identity. You wear personalities like a skin suit to benefit yourself in every avenue, and that alone. Yeah, it's no surprise that you read the Communist Manifesto and changed your entire political ideology like overnight. Yeah, certainly.
So by contradiction, I keep finding these little thoughts popping up in my head as I navigate my day-to-day and notice new ways to apply dialectical materialism to my life.
Wow.
And while the video might suffer a little bit for it, I think it'd be better for me to not rush the process of learning and evolving.
Probably a good
One
idea.
thing that I said before reading any of this stuff that I wholeheartedly agree with still is that communism is not a destination, but a direction. I've got a lot of literature that I'm planning on reading. Dialectical and Historical Materialism, The Motorcycle Diaries, Autre Vez, On Practice, Das Kapital, What is to be Done, On the Origin of Family, Private Property in the States, and plenty of...
Why don't you read modern Marxist thinkers? You're fucking wormholing yourself. You're trying to find an aesthetic of a historical example of communism that fits your niche understanding of the world instead of allowing that to shape your thought process and like dictate or give meaning or words to like how you're already feeling. It's like trying on shoes at the shoe store. Like you're not actually looking for like you're looking for a very specific kind of shoe, not whether or not it fits. Like, hello, what?
Of others. For the purposes of this video though, I think I'm done for today. I don't need to answer the question of is imperialism inevitable, or is there a version of imperialism that benefits the proletariat? No, for this video, there's only one question left that I really need to answer.
And what's that?
What stops all of this stuff from just being a fandom? I'm not a world leader, I'm not a revolutionary. Hell, my disability makes it more or less impossible for me to even just stand around with a sign.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, my disability doesn't even allow me to protest. Okay, yeah. I know who I'm hiding behind when the revolution comes, and it's Leadhead. She'll save me.
Protest. I don't get to be in a union. Pretty much all I can do is make these videos, help my family maintain unity.
Yeah, you can't be in a union because you can't get a fucking job. Get a job!
And fix up their cars whenever something goes wrong with one of them. So how is this any different than me learning a bunch of details about Metal Gear Solid or a Stanley Kubrick movie? I mean, I don't even get into arguments on the internet with people, so what benefit could reading all this stuff possibly have on such an isolated life made so...
Why would you learn something just to argue about it? Do you not have curiosity? Do you not have a thirst for knowledge?
Small in its scope by my disability. Well, some parts of that benefit I've already discussed a bit, but let's go a little bit more in depth before we wrap this thing up.
Okay, let's do it.
My wife is a very emotive person. If she's in a bad mood, she's absolutely horrible at hiding it. That's a great quality, to be honest. I mean, lying about how you feel is something that any honest person should struggle with. The thing is, it's always been incredibly difficult.
Being emotive is not lying about how you feel. Okay.
For me to assume that it wasn't because of something that I did. Maybe I lost her lighter, or left a dish dirty when I thought I cleaned it, or forgot to say thank you after she did something nice for me. Not to sound like a broken record, but that's mechanical materialism. It's individualism, and it's even a little bit imperialistic of me in a way. So focused on...
Dude, the way that I navigate my relationship is imperialism, if you really think about it. She's delusional to dangerous levels. This is actually crazy. Like, she is so fucking narcissistic. This is crazy.
On myself, I would always assume that her mood was dictated by my actions. I was denying her complexities and downplaying the intricacies of her personhood by assuming that my actions were the sole motivating factor for any sort of change within her. I was too self-centered to see that a lot of the time, her mood is an expression of the contradictions that exist within her, just as my mood is an expression of my own contradictions. Of course,
Today we learned the word contradiction. Very cool.
Always done everything I could to be fair and equitable, but I could never really see a way to resolve that little nagging issue that would come up between us before I read On Contradiction. Now, when she's in a bad...
Dude, Mao Zedong saved my marriage. That is a strong message. Mao Zedong saved my marriage.
Whoa! This is a strong message!
My disability, my modern version of my struggle. This is a strong message, witness bard. No, it's just an excuse. It's pure laziness. People don't want to commit and like live the principles that they think are aesthetically appealing. Like, you think that this thing is really cool and it looks really good on paper, and people love people who are altruistic and like give back to their communities and blah, blah, blah. Like, everybody loves that, but I'm not willing to do that. How do I get out of doing this? I know, I can't stand. Okay, sure.
Mood, I make sure she's comfortable, quickly ask, hey, was it something I did? Just to give her the opportunity to open up in case I did make a mistake. And then rather than try to convince her that her problems aren't as significant as they feel, I just simply comfort her. It's not my job to fix her bad moods. No matter how close we get, I will always be an external force on her. It sounds dumb, and this really is just a tiny little thing, but reading that Mao essay genuinely taught me how to treat my wife a little bit better.
Dude, Mao Zedong saved her marriage. That's beautiful.
And how to not put so much pressure on myself to fix everyone else's problems. Because ultimately, I can help, but I'm never going to be the solution to something that someone else...
The real revolution was the revolution that was in my heart.
...struggling with. Since I read these two pieces of literature, little moments like that are constantly happening for me. I feel like I have grown so much in just the past week. I feel like, though I was already good for these people, through understanding the mechanics of the good that I do, I can now be even better for them. And it really is an amazing feeling. I'm getting better, I'm improving and growing in ways that might have taken me years longer had I not started reading communist theory. I'm not a world leader, I'm not a revolutionary, but that right there, that growth, that evolution, is what makes this communism stuff more than just a fandom to me.
I'm willing to bet good money, mark my words. This is going to turn into a cult and someone's going to die. I'm willing to bet money.
Then, a whole other benefit to all of this is that I finally feel like I can hold my own in political conversations. I've been proofreading the script to my friends over and over and over again, every single night, discussing it with them, learning stuff from them, and to see them, these people who know so much more about this stuff than I do, be genuinely impressed by my work, and to see them learning things from me.
By my work. I'll take things that never happened for 500, Alex. This is quite literally conspiracy level shit. I'm quote unquote doing my own research by reading on Project Veritas level shit. Like my work is aesthetically learning about a political ideology for YouTube. Very cool, very impressive. Put that shit on a resume. Alright, love you.
Is such.
Oh, Layla, thank you for the $2. Mao Zedong is their third marriage. Is the third in their marriage. Very beautiful witness. Peru.
An incredible feeling. They've read a lot more than I have, but every human has their own interpretation of everything that they see, and those separate interpretations are so valuable. To finally be able to interpret things about society in a way that really is my own, and not just parroting some boy video, feels amazing. Like, I've gone from having vague, vibes-based concepts in my head, like, something about categorization feels like inherently fascist, but I can't really explain why, to...
Categorization is inherently fascist. You understand that the classification of bourgeois versus proletariat is categorization? Hitler drank water. Drinking water is fascist. Oh my god.
It's mechanical materialism. Using external subjective observations to gauge the nature of a subject is inherently flawed, naive, idealistic, and dogmatic, and it lends itself so thoroughly to prejudice, ignorance, and judging books by their covers. Plus, it ties into the world of corporate marketing, where we're all manipulated into believing that one brand of American cheese is inherently better than another, because one has flashier packaging, which feeds into people mentally separating themselves from folks who have to spend a little bit more time in the grocery store, thinking that little bit more economically consciously.
Leadhead, you literally eat Chick-fil-A. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. All the books that you ordered, you probably ordered off of Amazon. Shut the fuck up.
Y'all already know that I love being able to explain what's going on in my mind, and now that I'm able to explain stuff like categorization feeling fashy to me, and more nuanced than, oh, it's just a vibe I get, I feel like there is nothing in the world right now that I can't discuss or at least learn about, and I look forward to seeing what I do with it. It's a good feeling.
So crazy. She's deranged. She's unwell, bro. More fake smoking.
Let me make one more traditional appeal, though.
She's not even inhaling the cigarette.
Let me make one more
She's not even inhaling, you guys.
traditional appeal, though. Odds are good that many of you are here subscribe to me because you love art. Be it video games, film, music, whatever. This channel started out as me analyzing a whole lot of art that I loved and showing you all how I was using art to improve myself. And God, I really can't overstate this. Reading a bit of communist theory has made the art that I've always loved hit just so much harder. I mean, I cried my eyes out the other day watching Full Metal Jacket, even though I've seen it plenty of times. You know, just because now I have a better understanding of what the people of Vietnam were defending themselves against, and watching how the US government robbed Private Joker of his empathy and broke his mind just
I'm breathing through it. I'm breathing through it.
He was on the cusp of developing a pro-social philosophy for himself. Just, it broke me in a great way. I mean, the song Dear Mama by Tupac absolutely bodies me now that I know a little bit more about who the Black Panthers were and what they stood for, and knowing that
Wait till she finds out who Asada Shakur is. Oh my god.
that Tupac's mother was a Black Panther who nearly lost herself to the crack epidemic, and knowing a little bit more of the intricacies of how the crack epidemic started and the failures of the system that enabled it. I mean, Dear Mama has become one of the most soul-wrenching songs in the world for me. Or God, Half-Life 2. Now that I've spent a bit of time learning about how and why imperialism happens, the Combine are even more interesting to me as villains, and the humans are even more aspirational. The Big Lebowski is way funnier to me. Arrested Development has a whole new level of insanity attached to it now with all the Iraq stuff. Fargo's satirization of world philosophies is even more amusing and poignant. Bus Driver's albums are way more digestible. Even when I disagree with an artist's politics, I'm able to engage with their work in a whole new way.
Wow.
Y'all already know that I like to dive deep on the art that I love. I felt like I could never feel anything about Half-Life 2 or Metal Gear or Bioshock or Disco Elysium or The Beginner's Guide or Tyler the Creator that I hadn't already felt before, but it's just like a whole new layer of appreciation that I can tack onto all this stuff. My relationship
Aladdin wrote A Whole New World. That song in Aladdin, it's about Leadhead. That's crazy.
with the art that I love has grown in such a beautiful way. I've only read a couple pieces of theory so far, and I already feel like I can make entire new videos on like 90% of the things that I've ever covered on this channel if I really wanted to.
Please don't, please.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm even considering making just a fun small little side video called like Applying Marxist Theory to Half-Life 2.
Holy shit,
I've been so thoroughly enriched by this experience. Even if I'm gonna have to do a lot more reading to get all the info on all these things that I want to know about, this experiment has been an overwhelming success. So God, just please go read some theory. I know my audience.
You read one page of theory, don't understand it, think that you can do one quick read through of it and completely internalize all of it, enough to critique it in a meaningful, like, pseudo-academic sense, and you read one page of theory and then you pretentiously look down on the plebs in your audience and say, read theory. I have to go and buy Galaxy Gas right now. This is crazy.
So I'll say that if you won't do it for me, do it for the art that you love. It just gets better. Above all else, just don't ever stop being curious. You know, all this theory's great.
That's crazy. You're the most uncurious bitch alive.
Or really anything in the world is only as good as the people that you share it with. So I'm gonna try to ditch my imposter syndrome a little bit and go learn some stuff from my friends. I'll see you all in the next video. So what were you saying about Trotsky? You said you were reading some of his stuff?
Yeah, I read his Dialectics. It was pretty good.
This is unbearable, 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 unbearable. To the gulag, 500 years hard labor. 500 years hard labor. Please, God, please, God, please, God, please, God. Like, I think that there is something really cool about people wanting to learn more things and always wanting, you know, to learn more about history, more about things that they're interested in, and then being excited about learning new things. But that stops when that curiosity, that knowledge becomes and remains performative in nature. Because it is really important to kind of always be internally critiquing yourself, always asking questions, always wondering why, always seeking new information, learning new things, continuing to grow and develop in your knowledge about certain subjects. This is all very important. However, that needs to be inspired by wanting to know, not by wanting to be perceived a certain way by other people. Because, again, if this was like this big introspective journey of, I want to learn more about this because I've heard a lot about it, but I don't know a ton about communism, but it sounds like that might be something that is kind of true to my values and maybe something that I could learn more about because maybe there's a lot about it that I don't know. And maybe there's some stuff that I could find relevant or stuff that even I would really relate to in reading it or learn more things about the history of these things, whatever the fuck. That's always really cool. That's always really awesome, guys. Learning is great. Always learn. Never stop learning. Never stop asking questions. But this begins and ends with this performative, like, masturbatory video of I'm going on an adventure to learn about all this shit. I read one page of it, and it changed my entire fucking worldview in less than 24 hours. And I'm going to record all of this and talk like an authority to my audience, all of whom probably have higher degrees of education than I do. It's so pretentious. It's so gross. It's so condescending. It's so uncurious. It's so unthoughtful. It's just slop. It's fucking slop. And it makes me mad. And it makes me mad. And I hate it. And I hate Leadhead. And I hate her because she's an idiot. I hate it. What a great time to suffer, guys. Do you think through the performative curiosity, she could stumble onto something genuinely meaning for her and learn to make it not performative? No, I don't, because I think that at the end of the day, Leadhead is somebody who is motivated only so far in as something can benefit her. I think this is demonstrated by her almost pathological need to broadcast everything to the internet. If she is to stumble across something that is deeply meaningful to her in any kind of productive way, It will only be used as a tool to boost her perceived knowledge, perceived expertise, or perceived standing in any given community. I think that people that are truly high off of their own farts and they have their head so far up their ass that they cannot see the forest for the trees, I think that those people, even when confronted with genuine opportunities for growth and change, will never take it, because personal growth and change comes at great compromise to you. Growth and change is very uncomfortable. It's very difficult to do, and it's very hard to challenge yourself in a meaningful way if you think that your framing and perceptions of the world are always undoubtedly correct and true. And that's what Leadhead is at the end of the day, is somebody who only can see things through the prism of her own understanding and is so delusional that she believes that these things are framed and presented in a way that somehow magically map on to every experience in her life. For example, she made a video talking about her coming out. And at the time, this was before the Ashley drama. This was before she did this weird, like, cringe fucking found family bullshit or whatever. When she made this video, she made it very clear that she had a lot of support from her friends and family in this time, and that she's very grateful that her friends and family were supportive of her, because other people are not as lucky to have supportive friends or family when they're transitioning. Later down the line, in the video that we watched about Tyler, the Creator, she says that she was very isolated and alone, and she had never been at a lower point in her life than when she came out. And that narrative switch is all that I need to see to be able to quite definitively say Leadhead is a liar, Leadhead is manipulative, Leadhead will bend the truth and distort perceptions of reality, embellish or leave out certain details to paint her in a way that she thinks will make her more agreeable to whatever audience she's talking to. And the reality is that she has a found family because she needs an audience. She is unable to process anything without having other people to validate her thought process, which is why she has the complete and total inability to do anything in isolation. Like she said, she's like, I have to bounce all these ideas off of people. I have to talk to people all the time. She is a circus performer first and foremost, and she will die a circus performer, because all she cares about is looking good to whoever she is standing in front of, and she will change details of stories depending on who she thinks is listening. So even if there was this great epiphany of coming to terms with this thing that I learned is actually very true and relative to my life, this is a great opportunity for potential growth and change, she will not take it if it does not benefit her in any material way, because she is a narcissist, a crazy person, a liar, delusional, a marquee of stakes. And watch out for people like this, because they are very manipulative and they're very good at it, because you can see it. You can see it if you look hard enough for it, and it's very scary. It's very scary.